Blog Talk Radio.
I'm not the king of conspiracy. I'm the king of reality.
Have you heard of this before? Is the education system so poor that it's just creating a generation of mindless consumers that have no opinion and are perpetually stuck in a semi-conscious state?
But there's a reason. There's a reason. There's a reason for this. There's a reason education sucks. It's the same reason that it will never, ever, ever be fixed. It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you got. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The big, the wealthy, the real owners, the big, wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. They're irrelevant. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't.
Politicians don't care. Period. Not one bit. Nothing. No caring at all.
Shut up! He's not a businessman. He knows stuff. He's talking. I just want to eat cheeseburgers and be an idiot.
Deep down in my gut, I got a bad feeling because my government lies to me so often, I don't know what I can believe anymore.
I can't take it anymore!
I mean, not for nothing, but doesn't it seem that every politician in office is a complete jackass?
You listen to me. Ideas are bulletproof, and you cannot stop us. Liberty is rising. The spirit of 1776 is indomitable, and you are a mind-controlled weasel.
Have you heard of this before? You mean this place is dangerous? Yeah, I don't believe that for 1 second. Yeah, it's true. I read a new research study about it.
I can't take it anymore!
It's time, once again, for everybody to face the facts.
Welcome, boys and girls, to yet another fun-filled and action-packed episode of Face the Facts. I am Kerry Corn. It is the 27th of May, 2012, and before we get into anything else, you know, my mom's been having some health problems, so I just kind of want to, you know, set it out there, you know, that you know, dedicate this show to her. You know, she's made a lot of things that I do now possible, and you know, it's just one of those things. So if you guys have any positive thoughts, any prayers you've got that you're, you know, going to be able to hand out there, go for it, man. You know, we could use all of it that we could get. All of it we could get. Now, let's just get right down to business. First off, I've got, you know, my buddy ABC on the line, and he's a fellow show host. He's been doing stuff all over the place, and we kind of decided that we wanted to do a two-part series on fake conservatism, the cult of personality, you know, and how that affects the world that we're living in now. And so I've got him with me. I'm going to bring him up now. ABC, what's going on, brother?
Hey, what's happening, man? Thanks a lot for having me.
You know what? I appreciate your time. I know how busy it is, wife, kids, all that good stuff. So getting you on is good. And I think we should jump right into this business with Josh Tolley. I you know, talk about somebody who's phenomenal. This guy is a jack of all trades and probably a master of quite a few. You know, we're talking about a business and behavioral strategist, an advisor, a screenwriter, a developer of human interaction technologies, a relationship coach, and of course, you know, most people would know him as a syndicated radio talk show host. He's doing stuff with GCN, and that would be the Josh Tolley Show. This guy's work is phenomenal, and I suggest everyone go look his stuff up on YouTube. Go listen to him live. But in the meantime, you're going to get a taste of him live because Josh Tolley is with us right now. Josh, how are you doing, brother?
Man, that was a phenomenal intro. Thank you so much. I'm doing great. I'll be praying for your mom. I hope you two guys are doing great as well.
Yes, sir. Very much appreciate you being on.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a blast. We got a lot of important things to talk about and a lot of work ahead of us. So freedom never sleeps, and the march keeps moving forward.
That's right. You know what? It may be Memorial Day, but it's up to the three of us, I suppose, to shoulder the load and move it forward.
Sounds good.
Well, when you look at the country and what Memorial Day is all about, then what we're doing is really the epitome of honoring those who we're memorializing. I mean, those people who fell before us in order to preserve freedom died for something. And if we get lax in our watch, if we let that freedom die on our watch, then we're the generation that spits in the face of those who fought so hard to preserve it in the first place.
The absolute exercise of the First Amendment is about to take place right now, and I see no better way to memorialize what these people went out and died for.
Amen.
Hey, can I ask you guys real quick, since we are talking about the Memorial Day thing, one of the problems that I have are conflicts that come up is when we talk about the military and basically how best to appreciate and memorialize the soldiers. What's going on here is pretty crazy, and it's not about fighting for freedom and all this kind of stuff. And there's a concern that I have when we do all of this. I rail on this all the time, this thing about thank you for your freedom. It's like an automatic response. And we're venerating the military, which is helping to perpetuate and promote this militarization, is the way I look at it. What's your take on that?
Go ahead, Josh.
You want to go first?
You're the guest.
I think what we're witnessing is a morphing. I mean, there's no doubt that at some point in our history we had to fight for the freedoms in which we're now exercising right now. And the weird thing about freedom is it's something that everybody already has anyway. I mean, so I guess the best thing to do is to lay some groundwork here. When you're born, you have freedom. And it's liberty, which is the other people coming together and willing to recognize that freedom, which really allows you to operate in it. And it's the history that we've come from, a people that said, you know what, we don't want to be under tyranny anymore. We want to stand up and live our own lives. And that pushed us on the projection path that we're on today. Now, there's no doubt that path has taken a serious detour into a realm of a military-industrial complex and a totalitarian mindset. That is for sure. So in reality, as we continue to talk about this day and as people continue to enjoy their 3-day weekends, what we should really be focused on is how to get the mindset back of those people who are in service. Because, I tell listeners on my show this all the time. I understand the idea of talking about international policy and non-interventionalism, but in reality, none of us have stars on our shoulders and none of us work in the White House. So what we need to focus on is changing the hearts and the minds of those who do. And it's that fight that is really the fight for freedom at this point.
And just to add to that, I look at it like this: when John Smith goes down to the MEP Center and he signs his contract and he takes his oath, he is not doing this in the mindset that I'm going to go guard poppy fields in Afghanistan. He's not doing this with the mindset that I'm going to go oppress, some third world country now. He's doing it under the idea that he is defending the freedoms, that oath, enemies of the Constitution, foreign and domestic. It's not about, I really want to, what I'm going to do this weekend? I want to go occupy a foreign land. That sounds like, what I want to do. So I respect the mindset, that sacrifice, that personal choice that these individuals have made. And then it's up to us to educate people as to how these military men are being used.
Well, let me just throw one last thing in there with that. If you guys will recall, I'm sure both of you already know about this. The soldiers, I think it was during that Chicago protest thing, we had military soldiers throwing away their medals.
Right.
You guys know about that. So,
yep.
And I would just say I see that as a true... The truest form of patriotism, standing up for what you believe. And this is somebody who's, or people who've been in the fight, and coming to the realization that it's not what we're told it's about. So,
I really saw them throwing those medals as a shot across the bow of the enemy's foreign and domestic.
Well, you kind of bridged into another great topic, and that's patriotism. The servicemen and women are one thing, and patriotism is yet another. And patriotism is where the rest of us step in and actually live out what it is to be an American. One of the problems we have today is we're not facing just a totalitarian enemy who's destroying the Constitution. We're facing an enemy of complacency. We're facing an enemy of the Americans who don't want to exercise that freedom in the first place. And it's like a wrench that you might have in your garage. I might say it's out there. I might be proud that I have it. But unless I'm using it, you could have stole it 6 months ago, and I'm never going to know it until I actually go out there and need to use it. Right. And that's where we've allowed ourselves to be as patriots. Patriotism isn't just, posting something on Facebook. It's living out that freedom.
This is just an example of that, because for me, I talk constantly about individualism, being able to make your own choices, live with your own the consequences of those choices, and this is something that bridges into that, because you're talking about just posting something on Facebook, or even the folks that go even less than that. I can't be bothered with that. American Idol is on. It's about that individual choice. You have to make the decision to engage, educate yourself. Figure out what's going on, what the truth of the situation is, and then, hand that information out to other people. And, both of you guys, ABC and Josh Tolley, are two people who epitomize that. You guys do the research and you put it out there, and it's not easy work. Trust me, I believe that you guys would agree with me. It would be much easier to have everything just, be perfect in the world and be able to go out right now and be, barbecuing at the lake.
Yes. Yeah, it really would be, and I'm sure ABC has the same outlook on things. But there comes a point that once you know, well, now you're obligated. Right. And whoever came up with the expression "ignorance is bliss," there's a lot of truth to that.
Right.
Once you know what you're facing, you're thinking, man, maybe it is better to not know, just look the other way and let the bullet catch me in the back of the head. Because this fight you're fighting is one that you're fighting within yourself as well as the outlined enemy before you. And then we have those third and fourth enemies, which are just by consequence and ignorance. So it is a fight.
I totally agree with all of that. I'm excited to find out about how you got started on this journey there, Josh.
That's a very interesting question. Not how you would probably think. I used to be so shy that I couldn't order a hamburger from McDonald's. I couldn't pick up the phone and order a pizza. And the transition that has happened over the course of the past 10, 15 years is nothing short of just crazy. I started my first business at 18, started my second one at 19, third one at 22, so on and so forth. And that all came from understanding that if I was going to be successful, then I needed to control the weapons that were being used against me, and money is a weapon. So I needed to learn how to control that weapon a little bit to give myself a little bit more breathing room. And as I did that, more and more people asked me to speak. And then that turned into, can you take that same logic, reason, and strategy that you talk about in business and apply it to everything else? And I said, absolutely. So I started talking about all these other issues. And then they came to me and said, hey, you want to write a book? And I did. And then it turned into articles. And then eventually GCN over there, Ted Anderson, said, hey, have you ever thought about being on radio? And it's just been kind of a progression that has taken a life of its own.
Wow. Well, that explains the part about getting into this kind of public arena, but how about the part of not being comfortable with the information that you'd learned? What I often say to people is that everything we've learned is BS. It's all crap, and you need to relearn everything. And that's a bit of exaggeration or hyperbole to an extent. But I do think that we've been brainwashed and trained with a lot of crap. So how did you get to the point that you started to investigate in the inquiry? Where did that fall in line with your entrance into the public arena?
Well, it actually started right away. See, one of the problems I had in school was I didn't know how to read. I was really good at football. I'm kind of a bigger guy. I'm about 230, 240. And they kept passing me. They didn't care. And when I was getting ready to graduate, I was like, wow, you know what? I really better learn how to read, otherwise I'm going to be facing some trouble here. And one of the things I read was the Forbes 400 list. And on that list, I found that none of those people had a job. Yet every one of these teachers and parents and counselors, they were all telling me, go to school, go to college, get good grades, get a good job, and then you'll be happy for the rest of your life. And I know it's not as interesting as, you know, the Bilderbergers or the Rothschilds, you know, in some sort of owl-worshipping freak ceremony, but it was one of those eye-opening moments where I said, wow, there are 350 million people in this country buying a lie. What else have we been lied to about? And then that led into, you know, everything else. Where's the dollar come from? And, you know, just it just kind of snowballed from there. But it was that original Forbes 400 list where I really started thinking, maybe we're all believing a group lie.
See, now that's the first time I've ever heard that as the eye opener. I mean, everybody else has their different situation that caused them to, you know, wake up to what's going on around us. And, you know, for me, you know, it really it's funny. You know, I always kind of knew government was dirty, but not to what extent. And I watched this movie called A Waking Line, and there was a guy with a megaphone screaming on the corner, and I was like, who is this dude? And that was it for me. I ain't looked back since.
The guy with a megaphone.
Three guesses, Alex Jones.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of people who've come to this awakening through situations like that, and I understand it and I appreciate it. It's just different in my particular situation, and I think it's allowed me to look at things a little bit different too, because we have this idea that everything has to be one way or the other. You know, it's either black or white. There's either an enemy or a foe, and we don't really look at the totalitarian or the total situation. And when I was coming up through business, I also came up through a few schools in martial arts, and one of the businesses I was involved in was high-risk security. So I started to learn a lot about strategy, and at the same time I started studying behavioral strategy, like how your mind actually literally processes thought. And I started putting all these things together, and I said, you know, what these documentaries are doing is wonderful, and I'm producing one myself right now. But there also needs to be some strategy behind this. Knowing who your enemy is across the field only does us a little bit of good if we don't have a strategy to go after that enemy and secure victory. And I think where we're heading now as a movement is we're actually starting to put that strategy into place. We're starting to get beyond just info, and we're starting to get into walking that out.
And, you know, it's really helpful for us that these people that we're dealing with count on people not reading. They write down what they're going to do. It's a stunning degree of hubris, but they do. We have their playbook. It's just a matter of developing our own.
Yeah, exactly. You hit the nail on the head. It's all a matter of developing our own. And it's almost like we got so excited that we found their playbook that's where we decided to stop. And I get it. It's vitally important, but most of the information coming out now is, okay, this is their next play. This is their next play. Okay, that's great. That's fine. That's wonderful. But unless we have a plan, then again, I argue ignorance is bliss. And when I was playing football, the coach would always tell us at halftime, you know, don't play their game. Understand what their game is, but in the end, we make them play our game. So if freedom and liberty are going to make a shift and take back this nation, we need to start doing that. And what we're seeing now, really, in the past year to 2 years, is that transformational shift. Because there's been awesome people out there making books and documentaries ever since 1913. People were objecting to this thing. But it's only now that we're starting to see movement.
Well, let me just follow up on that, because I think that's a great point, and I don't know where you come down on this, but I have been supportive of Occupy Wall Street. And I know that there's a lot of people, and I totally understand it, that think that, you know, it's one of these, what do you call it? It's a setup, it's organized opposition and this kind of thing. And I totally understand that. And I can see where it's possible that was the intent. But with everything that's going on, there are so many people that are being affected, and the frustration is so high that I think many people have gotten involved. I've gone down to a couple of these things. I'm not very involved or anything, but I've gone down and spoken with people. And the point is that people are looking for an outlet. You know, they want to react, they want to respond, they want to rebel against what's happening. But, you know, people are currently smart enough. We're not looking to play into the hands of this cabal and create violence, but we want to make our voices heard. So to your point of, and I don't know if this is where you were going, but over the past couple of years or so, you know, people are getting restless, and there's different kinds of reaction out there.
Well, I think when it comes to things like Occupy Wall Street or the Tea Party, which is on the other side of that, you know, pendulum swing, I think what we see there is a pressure release valve. I think the people who are there, their hearts are in the right place, 100%. Actually, on the Tea Party side too. I mean, people are just frustrated. And the system knew that. So they needed to create, just like in a pressurized cooking pot, they needed to create a pressure release valve. Yeah. So they took each side and gave each of them a way to let off some steam, and then the majority of the people got to watch these protests, and we now hear things like, well, I know I'm frustrated, but I saw those people protest and it didn't do any good. And in a way, that's kind of the strategy of the adversary. And I'm not advocating getting violent, not at all. Matter of fact, I think now more than ever that's the stupidest thing to do, because I don't know about you, but I don't have a drone that can fire a rocket 500 miles away, or, you know, I mean, it's just stupid.
Right.
So we need to have a revolution, but we need to have a revolution of more than frustration. And it's easy to allow steam to build up and then release and then get your establishment back. And if we don't educate the people with a strategy after the uprising, then we don't have a follow-up. And that's exactly what we've seen happen to Occupy. They all had their heart in the right place the first 2 weeks. And then as soon as about 2 weeks went by, all of a sudden you started seeing people handing out flyers for socialism, for communism, down with free enterprise, down with libertarianism. And because they didn't go into it with an exit strategy, they were allowed to be co-opted during the process, and the same thing happened with the Tea Party on the other side.
I was ready to say the same thing. It's easy to co-opt people when you've got organizations that can, you know, come in and wave, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars under the nose of these people that are the supposed leaders of these groups. And it's been one of my goals, and it's something I've been working on with these shows, is to show the Tea Party people and the Occupy Wall Street people, and the real ones, not the co-opted ones, the real people that are looking for change, that, you know, your Occupy people are standing in front of one building, and it's an evil banker building, and they're waving their signs and they're yelling, and your Tea Party people are standing in front of one building, and they're angry, and they're waving their signs, but nobody's paying attention to the fact that these two buildings are connected at the 7th floor.
Well, exactly, and not only connected, but what do you do if you win? And I started asking people this in both movements. I'm like, okay, so you're outside the banks, and you're protesting for them to collapse. Let's say they collapse tomorrow. What's your plan then? Well, we would be free from the banks. Okay, but what's your plan? And that's the point. I mean, we're rallying around frustration as opposed to advancing a strategy. And when we don't have that strategy for advancement, we're just making noise.
Yeah, you used a football reference earlier, and I'm going to use one now. It really seems to me like we've got an awful lot of cheerleaders, and nobody wants to recognize the fact that this is a team sport. You know, you've got this cult of personality, and this is, I mean, something that I definitely wanted to talk about anyway, where people want to rally around this individual, rally around that individual. It's a team sport. We've got, you know, we've all got different angles that we need to take. We've all got to, you know, figure out what our assignment is, and then stick to that plan.
Well, you know,
exactly.
You know, I'll just comment real quick on that. And one of the, I think this is the key factor that this cabal relies on. You know, in our different discussions, we talk about this, but these people, this elite, and I call them a cabal, but they understand sociology. These people are like social scientists, and they understand us. They're like, doctors or something. They understand physiology, the biology, and everything, and they know us. They know who we are. They know how we're going to react, and all of this kind of stuff. So that we can't, it's enough just to get people to realize what's going on. To bring people along with a strategy it's almost like a bridge too far. And I don't want to say that it is, but I guess my point is that right now it's taken a lot to get people this far. And I think we've made some inroads in bringing people along. A lot of people are more aware now that, this left-right thing is meaningless. It's a trap. And it took a good while to get people to this point. So it's step by step. Fortunately, this internet has been a fantastic thing. Obviously, they have these different laws where they're ready to crack down on that. They've got these fusion centers and FEMA camps coming along. So there's preparations to stop the expansion of the information. But it's like a work in progress. So it's kind of hard for me to think of how we bring everybody along with a plan, or, do we know of a plan that everybody can push people in the direction of?
Well, that's, there are so many ways to go off of what you just said. And the first one, let's just go off the football analogy real quick. As soon as it was announced by the mainstream media that Ron Paul was quote-unquote out, I started getting tons of phone calls from newspapers saying, hey, what do you think about this? And my answer was the same. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all, because that's the mainstream media strategy. In football, when somebody fumbles the ball, we don't sit around and say, hey, kumbaya, and what are we going to do now, and whose fault was it? Somebody else picks up the ball, and they start running. Right. And when it comes to something like this, that's strategy. And if you look at the growth that this liberty movement has had, a lot of it has to do with strategy. A lot of it has to do with liberty-minded people buying radio stations and television stations and magazines and newspapers, and people like you and I who start shows, and so there's a lot of strategy to that. And we got away from just going the hippie route of let's all get in the park and sing kumbaya. You said
I got my bongo drum.
You said instead I want to spend my evening telling people about the information they need to know and what they can do about it. So we're starting to see some strategy. And I think, without tooting a horn, I think that's part of what I offer to this movement, is this idea of, okay, so we got here, now how do we strategically advance? And one of the things we need to realize in that advancement is anything that can be used as a weapon against you can be taken away and used as a weapon for you. And that's why, honestly, one of the smartest things we can do is get back to free enterprise. Because currently, the three of us on this show, we know the state of the money. We know it's fake. There's no difference than monopoly money. However, if we get some of it, if we get a lot of it, then we, while there's still time and before we end up in a camp someplace, can start buying more radio stations, more billboards, printing more books. And I'm going to tell you a little hint. You're going to want to start to get back to printed material. Because right now, they have done a wonderful thing on getting most of our information on the beautiful thing called the Internet. I'm up there, too. You guys are up there. But with a flip of one switch, that information flow stops. Right. And right now, information is all we have, and we need to protect that supply chain. So we really need to get back to old school paper, hold it in your hand. Yes, you can read it. So if they hit the kill switch tomorrow, we still have information going out to the people who need it.
There is a reason why I have not purchased a Kindle or any of these other things. I much rather would have that book in my hand anyway. And here's the thing, and this is something that I've advocated, and I haven't talked about it very often, but you can find a lot of this stuff in a PDF format. Print it off. Yep. I know we're talking about a 400-page printing job, but print it. Have a hard copy of it. You guys are hit the nail on the head. They can turn this information off at any time. They seize websites all the time.
That's a good point, and they're doing it already. I know there was a couple of links that I had that I went back into the archives and clicked on it, and it came up with that it's got some kind of thing. This is a government blocked something. It was eerie. It looked like freaking what was that? 1984 or something.
Well, that brings up a really interesting question. This might be a little tangential, but it's good discussion.
Tangents are fun.
When do we know? When we're there? Because here we are in a world where we know the information can be turned off, and that's no longer conspiracy theory. We know that their intent is to launch 30,000 drones in the next year and a half. We know that they're chipping school uniforms. When do we actually admit to ourselves, hey, you know what? It's not coming. We're there.
They've already admitted that they've got a secret assassination list, and they've already killed somebody on that list and his child. That they've already admitted they can drag you out via the military at the the whims of the Secretary of Defense of the President and drag you down the street. Yeah, we're there. We're there.
Yeah.
They're just taking their sweet time in implementation.
Well, besides that, I think it's also a matter of. And I agree with you there, CT, and I don't know where you stand with it, Josh, but I don't doubt that most of us who, and I'm still at a loss for a term, but in this awakened movement, whatever you want to, I don't have any doubt that most of us feel that we're already there. The question is, okay, so now what? And that kind of goes back to what you were saying there, Josh, about a strategy. And that's kind of the way I've looked at it is, get out and keep putting out the information. Aside from that, there's talk about preparation, food-wise, security-wise, and all this kind of stuff. But you make a very good point about trying to accumulate or engage in the economics of it, the free market, and participate and kind of use that old jujitsu move, use it against them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure, aside from that, what much else we can do. But I do think that we've been, it's taken a little while, but we've made some inroads to spreading the word. And I don't know where you are on this, Josh, but I do think that it's kind of, they have to deal with that. The cabal, the elite, they have to deal with that. When they make these moves, there's some, they have to take some time, I don't know how long, maybe it's a couple of minutes, maybe it's a couple of days, to factor in, okay, now how are we going to get around this part? We got those dang truthers out there. How are we going to manipulate this around those guys?
Well, we've kind of seen their hand in that. They get us to a point where we ask for it. And it's all based on fear, and we've seen it happen in Detroit, we've seen it happen in Oakland and New Orleans, where they allow crime to rise. They cut back on police forces, saying, well, it's all because of the budget. Meanwhile, they didn't cut the Parks Department, and if you were really worried about security, I think we would stop, putting in playgrounds and keep a couple cops.
Right.
But instead, they cut back on the cops, and then they allow crime to rise, and then the people literally ask for martial law. There was a state senator on television from whatever district New Orleans is in Louisiana, asking for the National Guard to be sent in and under the use of the president and the governor, saying, hey, please, please, please control us. So what we're really doing is we're fighting that battle. Now, one of the things that we need to keep in mind, we need something to fight for. And I think that's part of the brilliant strategy that we don't really hear talked about too much in regards to the enemy's focal point. We focus a lot on things like the money system, the fluoride in the water, and all those things are brilliant and true and keep talking about them. But unless we have something to fight for, we, just like any military force or any, I don't even want to use the term military force, but any people who want to advance a cause, how about that? They need something to fight for.
Right.
Think about it for a second. We're suffering from a 60 to 70% divorce rate while we're arguing about what marriage is. Meanwhile, we know that people who have bad relationships are going to suffer from depression. They're going to suffer from lack of income. And why haven't we thought for a second, wait a second, maybe it's them that are attacking our love lives? Where did the love go in America? If you read any of your founding fathers' letters to their wives during the Revolution, they were like, honey, I cannot wait for this war to be over to get back to you. They were fighting for something. Right now, we're just fighting not to lose. We're not fighting to win something. So we need to get back to that point where we have our own culture, our own vertical alignment. And we have lost, really, we've lost cultural identity. They told us that, we need to celebrate diversity, and how did they do that? They made us all non-diverse. We can't celebrate our diversity. They have to make us all the same.
Right.
So they've kind of neutered us in a way. They've taken away everything that people throughout the history of the world have fought for, and they knew this because it's the same people who've been trying to do this for thousands of years. They tried through military might. They've tried through financial might. They tried through taking over kings. But there was always something that the people had to fight for. Now they took that away first. There isn't a single area in the Constitution that we still have available to us without restriction, and there's not a single area in our personal lives that aren't manipulated and controlled, or at least wounded and damaged, to fight for. So they know, well, now all they have to do is really walk in and take the key.
And that's really been their plan and intention. Let me ask you guys this, because this has been where I promote this whole thing. I found in my dealings with different people that everyone else has kind of a pet issue, whether it's Monsanto and GMO food, fluoride in the water, aspartame, military-industrial complex. Everybody's got a pet issue that, they're the most passionate about. So what I've been trying to do is encourage all of these different groups to support one another. If your biggest thing is 9/11 truth, great, go talk about that. But at the same time, go out and support what the people who are protesting Monsanto are doing. Show them that support. It will grow on its own, because that feeling of goodwill will be there.
I think that's a great idea. One of the problems I see is that, to your point, those who focus on 911 truth really, really, really want to focus on 911 truth. So when we talk to them about, also understanding that, the chemtrails are out there, and that the big corporations, Monsanto, have taken over our food supply, and now we got this GMO and stuff. They hear it and they understand that as part of this scheme, but they really, really, really want to focus on 911, and vice versa. The food people will say that. I know that I have one listener that calls into my show that talks about what is it, the thing with the electric company, the
smart meters.
Smart meters?
Smart meters. She wants to talk about that every time, and it's important. It is serious. But I'm kind of like, my view is I'm trying to tie all of this together. So I don't dedicate enough time to it as far as she's concerned, and she every time she calls in, she's kind of frustrated. So I think we kind of have that issue with the people who have their key things that they want to focus on.
And for me, this is the trick, is, I'm not telling these people that they have to go out and protest with the Monsanto folks or with the anti-fluoride folks, but show them your support. Take their information, spread it around. There are different ways to do this, and what we have to understand from one end of the spectrum all the way to the other is we're fighting an octopus. They've released the Kraken. Okay,
yeah.
and we can all flail one-on-one against these various tentacles. It's not going to solve a whole lot. We need to, we've got to work together. It's a team thing. What if Ron Paul doesn't get the nomination? That's fine. I don't like it. I want to see this man become our president because I think he is what's right for this country. But he's not my leader, my hero. He's not wearing a cape. If he goes by the wayside, the movement continues on because the monster is still there.
Well, exactly, and I think that comes back to where's the strategy, because as ABC pointed out, there's people who call in and say, hey, 9/11 this, or hey, chemtrail that. think about this for a second. Let's say, I don't want to make anybody a believer in anything. Let's just say that you are somebody who says, hey, I have some questions about 9/11.
Right.
So let me get this straight. Your strategy is to say, hey, I have some questions about what the government might have done to these trade center bombings. So I want to take this to the very government that I think is guilty, and I expect them to fix it for me. That's not strategy. That's like saying, hey, my bank was robbed. I want to go to the mafia who robbed it and say, hey, I think you robbed the bank.
I'd like my money back.
That's not strategy. That's just exactly. So that's not really strategy. And there comes a point where we have to say, okay, look, regardless of how it happened or who did it, it happened. Now what? How do we move forward for this? What happened because it happened? What was the result of it? You know, I'm not saying don't focus on it. You know, this is a very delicate place to tread, because you do need to focus on the issue, but we also need to get beyond the cause of the issue and get to the ramifications of it. So, like, for example, when I talk to somebody in business about marketing, let's say a gym, I'll ask them, you know, why is your gym failing? And they say, well, I don't know. I tell people about cardiovascular health. I tell people that I started a gym because I was diabetic. I tell people that, you know, because of exercise, my husband's granddaughter or something is fighting off the causes of Alzheimer's, but people just don't join. And I said, well, of course they're not going to join. Why would you join that? And that's where we are today. What causes people to join the gym are those sexy commercials. You can look like Sally. You can be ripped like Bob. And what we're doing as a movement is we're trying to take the information that got us involved, you know, whether it was 9/11, whether it was chemtrails or whatever it is, and expect other people to get involved because of the same thing. And that just doesn't happen. If stuff like that got them involved, they'd already be involved.
Right.
If people who were into fitness, like gym owners, were into fitness, we'd all be fit. So you have to approach it strategically from a different aspect. You have to go to the people where they are. And just like we see through mass media, you appeal to where they are and then bring them to you. We need to do the exact same thing, and that's something we haven't been doing.
Well, let me ask you real quick there then, Josh. This kind of goes to, I guess, a bit of a frustration that I have. And, you know, I mean, I'm comfortable with what I'm doing, but you know, you would like to have more productive dialogue. One of the things that I see is I've always tried to talk about the big picture. Now, you know, that's all inclusive. And I do say that 911 is the foundation for this current tyranny and all this stuff. So I do kind of hit on that. But, you know, all of this stuff is the chemtrails and the GMO foods and the NDAA law and the executive order and the Patriot Act. You know, so there's a lot there. But the way I communicate it is that, you know, there is a cabal, which I guess that alone may be too much for people who aren't involved. Yeah. But, you know, yeah. I try to tell them, look, you know, we're being manipulated. We're being controlled and manipulated. And they're using religion. They're using race. They're using these, what do you call it, kind of provocative, not provocative, incendiary issues to galvanize. It's just like politics. They galvanize the electorate. And then that way you got somebody on this side, somebody on that side. But you own the whole thing, so, you know, you can't lose.
Right.
And it's that thing. That's how we're being manipulated. But that's a little too broad, maybe. You know, so to your point, you know, how do you bring people into that understanding or idea, you know, without just focusing on one thing? Or
You get to a place where they discover it themselves. If you talk to anybody on this call, matter of fact, we started with it. How did you get to where you are? I read the Forbes 400 list by myself and went, whoa, you're absolutely right. A lot of people have watched a DVD for the first time and said, whoa, you're absolutely right. But those things are getting out there and they're working, but we need more. So instead of going after people and telling them what you know, start asking them questions where they need to find the answer.
Right.
Say to them, instead of saying, hey, you know what I heard? I heard that the Federal Reserve owns your money and it's all fake. Well, you know what? There's tons of Hollywood movies that say the same thing, so you're going to look like all the funny people in the Hollywood movie, and they're going to say, oh, you're one of those conspiracy theorists. Or you can say something like this. Oh, my gosh, Bob, I don't know if this is true or if it's just like some movie plot, but I saw this crazy thing. Did you have $1 on you? And they take out $1. I didn't know. Well, what does that say? It says Federal Reserve note. What does that mean? And just leave it. Just leave it. Let them figure it out themselves, because then they're going to go home and be like, you know what, I have no clue. Let me Google it. And once they Google it, they're going to be up until 2 in the morning on this road of self-discovery. They're going to come back to you in the morning and go, oh, my goodness, do you know what? There were these people called the Rothschilds. And you just sit back and go, oh, yeah, right.
Well, you just taught me
people. Exactly. You just taught me something. So we have to decide: do we want to be the people who beat people over the head with information, or do we want to lead them to it? And leaders are leaders because they lead people. Otherwise, we'd be called pushers. People don't push people into you lead them to it. So we need to develop leadership in this movement.
See, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's about planting those seeds. You know, just drop them everywhere. You don't have to go, oh, my God, we're all going to die. They're putting fluoride in the water. It causes cancers. Oh, my Lord. you don't have to do that. You just plant the seeds, you know. Somebody standing in line talking about the economy, and you mention, it's really strange, but did you know I just heard they received 1,000 to 1 phone calls against this banker bailout, and now they're not loaning to people. It's really strange how they're doing that. Did you know anything about that? You just plant the seed and you walk away. You plant the seed and you walk away. Because
let me give you 2 quick examples. Okay. One is the chemtrails. The chemtrails is one of those things that I did a lot of research on myself and be like, oh my goodness, they're spraying stuff. And at first I wanted to tell everybody. I was like, oh my goodness, it's aluminum raining down on you. And people are like, yeah, whatever. But then I changed my strategy and I said, hey, look up. I know this might sound dumb, and they might have taught us this in like elementary school, but I forgot. What is that behind that airplane? Oh, that's just what happens when exhaust hits cold air. And then you can say, really? Then why is it in the winter when I drive to work I can't follow the trail back? And then for the next 6 hours they're going to be thinking, oh my goodness, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, exactly. And we can do that with so many issues. Just lead them to questions. Well, and then when they start asking questions, they find out the information.
If you can lead the horse to water, you can't make him drink, and if you beat him over the head, you end up with an unconscious horse.
Wait, no. See, that's a wrong strategy to have, and that's why I write books on strategy. The phrase was, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And my jack-of-all-trades mindset said, well, wait a second, sure I can. I just run him and make him thirsty first. If I make a horse thirsty, I can lead him anywhere, and he'll drink anything.
Nice. See, now we have a tactician, boys and girls.
Hey, so let me ask you, Josh. I listened to 1 or 2 of your shows on YouTube, but so after everything we're talking about here, what is it that I got 2 questions for you. What is it that you talk about on your show? How do you approach your shows? Do you pick a topic, one topic for each show, or how does that go? And then the other one, I'm just going to throw both of these at you. The other one is the 911. I would like to hear you talk a bit about that, because it sounds like you said that about 10 to 15 years ago is when you started to kind of get into this awakening, and 10 years ago was 911. So it seems like it's kind of a marriage there.
Well, the match is coincidental with my age, but yeah, you're right. There's a match. So let's do the first one first. With my show, how I usually work the show is I didn't want to do writers. I know people like Glenn and Hannity. They have writers on staff, and there's a lot of shows that we listen to that have writers. I figured I'm best when I wing it. So what we do is we have a couple of researchers and myself, and I come in about an hour beforehand, and we kind of pile through all the topics for the day, and I kind of pick the things that I think have importance to what our objective is. Now, I run the show with three things in mind all the time: logic, reason, and strategy. And those three things apply to everything. Then I take that and I say, okay, everybody seems to do a show on something, whether it's a show on conspiracy theories, whether it's a show on money like Dave Ramsey, or politics like Rush, or whoever. Everybody seems to have their one area, and that creates imbalance. If we focus on just politics, then you're going to avoid those relationships in your life, and before you know it, you're a governor of a southern state having a hooker in Brazil. I mean, it's just you need to find that balance throughout your life. So we try to take the show and cover all areas of life. We cover politics, religion, business, entertainment. We cover everything, because you need that balance. And as much as we hear it in our movement, oh, there's too much of a fight. Why are you watching a baseball game? To be honest with you, the same reason why your adversary with a huge military-industrial complex, the same reason they still give their troops R&R. You need that time to regroup.
Gotta decompress.
You need that time to relax. Exactly. So we cover a little bit of everything on purpose. Now, as far as 9/11 goes, I've never, and this is going to be an exclusive for you guys, I guess, I've never really broached that topic on my show. For the simple fact of, from a strategic standpoint, it doesn't really offer us that much of an advantage. I get the idea of blowback. I understand that, there might have been gold under there. I get it. But bringing it up seems to change the focus of the conversation from what can we do, as opposed to let's just hit it on the head again a million times, who's responsible for it. So in terms of the whole 9/11 thing, yes, I have questions. I don't think you're unpatriotic to have questions. Matter of fact, one of the things that makes me mad is when politicians or media figures have the lack of maturity to say anybody who wants to have answers is questioning their country. I think it's the opposite. I think everything should be questioned. Right. And I don't know who it was who gave that testimony, but the testimony was real short, real simple. Put your pan on your gas stove, and when that melts, call me back. And that right there was like, whoa, a great point. That's just a great point. And it's one of those things, he planted that question in my head, and I'm like, okay, now I need to do a little more digging. So, right. Yes, I definitely have questions. I think sometimes we limit ourselves to two enemies. I think that we've said it's either the terrorists in the Middle East or it's our government, But I think we take out of that equation a multiple of other possibilities because we've become so linear in our thought process.
I've never understood why it couldn't be a combination of the two. I've never understood why it's got to be one of
fourth party, or where was Russia that day? Why does it have to be one or the other?
Yeah, Pakistani ISI has their fingerprints on it. You can see so many different things that were involved in this that it's impossible for it to only be this one segment of the world population. It's just no way.
Well,
exactly.
The way I look at it is very simply, what has resulted from that? And then between that, the answer to that question, and then also factoring in this PNAC document, that's, where it leads me to this idea that there is someone, and I don't even say exactly who, I just call it the cabal, nameless people, but this is an organized agenda that's being promoted, propagated. I don't know quite what the term is, but it's an agenda that's being worked. The question is who and where and how and this kind of thing.
Well, let me kind of just clear something up before somebody emails me and says, "Oh, Josh," let me just make something clear. I believe it's vitally important that we do figure out who's responsible and what happened. I do. But I was a high-risk security person for a very long time, and I understood that if I was engaged with an adversary, it now isn't the time to tell that adversary, okay, you just take a time out because I want to figure out if you had a bad day that got me here engaged with you today. No. First I have to combat my adversary. First I have to protect the things that I'm supposed to protect. Once that's secure, then we can go back and say, okay, who did this? And I think that's where the truth movement has kind of dropped the ball. We like you hit it on the head, ABC. You nailed it. Because you said, what were the consequences of this? Well, the consequence of this is the lack of freedom. We lost liberty. We lost privacy. Well, then that should have been the focus until we made sure we retained them. Because right now, whether it was the government or whether it was a bunch of terrorists, either way, they're winning. Whoever they are, they're winning.
Right.
So we've been so focused on trying to identify who they are, we're not blocking the punches that are coming in to make us lose in the first place. We need to secure our victory first. Just like even if you were a bouncer, you wouldn't be like, hey, guy, before you punch me, let me just tell you, did your girlfriend wear that skinny dress on purpose? No. You still have to deal with the fist that's coming at your face. Once you take him out of the game, then you can say, hey, what got us to this point, and what can we do to prevent it and hold those responsible for it accountable?
Well, just to comment real quick on that. The problem there, and I absolutely agree with what you're saying, but there's an extra factor that we need, something else we need to factor in there. These people understand that. So what they do is they keep hitting you with other stuff, distractions here and there. So you can't focus long enough to try to think, look, we need to hold on to our freedoms. So, you're hit with this, you're hit with that. Next thing you know, here's a law here's a TSA. We're going to do that, and everybody going to need to take off their belt and something. And then, you complain about that, and then, boom, a guy had a bomb in New York, but it didn't explode, and, wow, what happened over there? Then, boom, the economy is exploding in Europe. You're all distracted. You don't know which way is left or right.
Right, because they allowed us to become distracted, and that's the problem. See, if when we had a terrorist attack, regardless of who carried it out, we would have said, okay, now is the time we defend what makes this country, and what makes this country is the Constitution. Right. That should have been the number one thing we rallied to and defended. We should have said on September 12th, okay, we got hit by a terrorist. We need to make sure that from this day forward, we never give up on privacy. We never give up on personal property. We never give up. Because just from a strategic standpoint, how stupid were we? There isn't a terrorist in this world who thinks that a bunch of terrorists can take down a country that spans 3,200 miles and has 350 million people in it. We couldn't do it in Iraq, and we have the world's most powerful army. So the goal of them, whoever they are, wasn't to take over the people. It was to take over the freedoms and the Constitution that those people upheld. And we dropped the ball. We started saying, okay, how am I going to be safe, as opposed to how am I going to defend the very thing that I took an oath to defend. You didn't take an oath to defend people if you serve in the military. We kind of have that confused. You took an oath to defend the Constitution. That comes first. Will we suffer casualties? Yep, maybe, but we'll die American. And I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees.
Yeah.
And we've kind of got this mindset of I would rather live in a zoo and just be protected, and as long as you give me my 3 square meals, I'm okay, I won't complain.
3 hots in a cot. Guess what? That's prison.
Right.
That's prison. Hey, we're coming up on break time. Let me go ahead and run the station break, and then we'll come back on the flip side. We'll talk Paul Fest, some of the other things that you're engaged in, Josh, and just continue this on. It's a great conversation.
Sounds good.
All right, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna pay the rent. The rent needs paid, because without the rent being paid, the lights don't stay on. See how I flipped that? You guys like that, don't you? All right, here we go.
5 Star Shine carries the world's best accessories for your vehicle, including their world-famous 5 Star Shine paint protection system. 5 Star Shine protects your vehicle with a super slick coating of PTFE. PTFE is used in the U.S. space program and is the same material used to make non-stick cookware. 5 Star Shine actually keeps your vehicle cleaner with a dazzling shine. To see 5 Star Shine and all their other products, go to 5starshinepro.com. 5starshine.com. That's the number 5starshine.com. Or you can go to latenightinthe-midlands.com and click the 5-Star Shine menu option.
Are you ready for more than just a job that barely makes ends meet? Have you ever considered a home-based business where your earning potential is limitless? Where you decide how much you want to make for you and your family? Where you can be part of one of the most explosive and upcoming industries in the world? Be a part of a company that is poised and ready to explode into 24 countries in the near future. We're looking for leaders to help others with their health, wealth, and purpose. How about being a part of a community of people who want to bring awareness and change lives with health, wealth, and purpose? For more information, please call toll-free 888-598-3030. Working together, we can bring dreams, purpose, and happiness for all mankind. To learn how you can get started working with our exciting team now, call 888-598-3030. That number again is 888-598-3030. Or click the home business link at project.nsearch.com, latenightinthe-midlands.com, or our new social network site, nsearch.com. NSearch is calling on good people around the world to spread the truth about things such as God, free energy, natural cures, or anything else that can help humanity in these dark days. No one can stop us when we work as a team to spread the truth, and that's why we created Team NSearch. Right now, we need people to post and share information on social network at nsearch.com and project.nsearch.com. We could also use some dependable people handing out our business cards and flyers whenever they can. If you'd like to help NSearch in any way, contact Glenn Kennedy on his website at www.project.nsearch.com. We also encourage as many of you as possible to add us to Skype ID team.nsearch so we can quickly reach you that way also. You can get access to electronic versions of our flyers and business cards by going to the Help menu option at nsearch.com. Print them out on your own computer or use them on vistaprint.com to print your own. You can also purchase a box of our business cards through our Help page on NSearch. We highly encourage our listeners to get the free Skype program and add us through Skype ID team.nsearch. This is the most reliable way we can reach you. Join Team NSearch, spreading the truth around the world today, and may God bless all your efforts.
All right, boys and girls, as with any big guest, there is no 3-minute warning, so I hope you took care of anything you had to take care of while we were at the station break. And we're back. Look at that. That's how that works. This is Face the Facts. I'm Kerry Corn. I'm going to bring up my buddy ABC and the incomparable Josh Tolley now. And just right off the bat, I think what I want to throw out there is you've got a couple other things you're doing besides Paul Fest, and the one I think that intrigues me the most is this Covers for Covers thing. And I was wondering if you talked about that a little bit.
Well, Covers for Covers is I love music, and if I could do anything, it would be a musician. However, I have no rhythm. I don't have the voice for it. So I was trying to figure out, okay, what can I do in music that lines up with what I want to do? And I believe culture is important. I believe in individuals giving to individuals as opposed to governments giving to individuals. So I came up with this idea. What if we took musicians and we had them do a cover song of another musician's music and then put it all on one CD or album or download? And for example, and these aren't specifics, but like what if you had, I don't know, Britney Spears singing a Garth Brooks song or whatever, very, very crossover. And then we sold that. And the proceeds from those downloads and album sales went to buying blankets and covers for homeless people and homeless children. So it would be Covers for Covers.
Wow. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. I thought it'd be kind of fun to get involved, and people definitely need the help.
That's fairly brilliant. Have you had anybody step up and take part in that already?
Oh, man. I did not know the size of the beast that the music industry is until I decided to throw my foot in it. There are so many rules and if you're going to cover the song, it has to be done in this way, and we need to know exactly which outlet is going to have it. It is a mess. I mean, the music industry is a complete mess. No wonder Prince kind of revolted years ago.
Yeah.
So we're looking at ways to kind of move around that. We're looking at artists who maybe are having bad relationships with traditional labels, or just labels who want to do something out of the goodness of their hearts or something. But it's a slower push than we wanted. I wanted it up already, and I wanted it going already.
Right.
So we have to cross a few more T's and dot a few more I's.
It might help. I just, something that comes to my mind, and I'm sure you thought of this, is finding an artist who's willing to do something like this, who owns their own masters, and that would give them the authority to, give you the song so that they could go, other people could come in and perform it.
You would think that would be an easy solution, but most of the major hits that people would recognize aren't owned by the artists. And even if they are, those masters are still registered with things like BMI and ASCAP and stuff like that. So even if they owned it, if I intend to play it or sell it, I still have to go through one of those 3 regulation bodies that control all the music.
A matter of distribution rights and all of that, then.
Exactly.
You often hear about that, where these artists, and these guys are making millions of dollars, a lot of them, the ones that are complaining, but they all say that it's like slavery. You belong to the label, or you got manager, and you got these distributors, and it's just a mess. I mean, it's kind of hard to feel sorry for somebody that's making $1 million, but when you're doing all that work, and all these people, all these vampires are getting rich off of you, I can imagine that you're not too happy with the situation.
Exactly. And that brings up a really great point, and I don't mean to get too tangential here, but that brings up a great point. It's because they're millionaires that we don't say, hey, it's unfair. We tend to ignore the liberty issue when it's something of magnitude like that, but in reality they're facing the same situation. And we've seen the establishment do that with the 1%. We seem to get this idea, well, we need to blame the 1%. And if you really think about it, 1% of 350 million people is 3.5 million people. I can guarantee you 3.5 million millionaires didn't meet at Denny's last Wednesday to come up with a global plan against you. So it's really not 1%. It's 0.00001%, and they're saying, hey, you need to blame these people. And it goes to this old strategy of, there's these 2 guys in the woods, and one of them has a little knife, and the one guy says, well, what is that for? And the one guy says, well, in case a bear attacks, and the other guy says, well, that wouldn't kill a bear. He goes, I don't have to kill a bear, I just have to cut you. So there's this idea.
That's pretty good.
Well, it's true. But there's this idea that if the elite can make another elite, then you'll chase the wrong enemy.
Right.
And that's
in reality,
for a while. That's misdirection. That's classic.
Exactly. It's Penn and Teller do it every night. It's called magic.
That's what we have with these politicians, the president and the Congress. They ain't controlling nothing. They're giving them marching orders, reading off a script.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's really where we're at. That we're taking a page out of their playbook. We're stealing one of their most successful plays. They have talking heads, whether it's MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, PBS. They have their talking heads going out and pushing this message, pushing their agenda, and using that as a divide and conquer strategy, saying the right things to get the hamsters to stomp the wheel that sends the pellet down. We're the talking heads for this movement towards freedom and liberty, and there's not enough of us, and in very few exceptions, Josh, yourself, the Alex Joneses of the world, very few of us are getting mainstream coverage. So it's an uphill battle, but at least we're doing it.
Well, exactly, and we are taking their playbook, and they know it, and that's why in recent years, that's why you've seen things like a shift towards digital. we are blessed with the opportunity to have a mainstream show. People can tune into their station and get it. However, there's not a station that we air on that didn't recently have to install a little box onto their broadcast system, which gives control of their entire station to the people in D.C. So if you notice, a lot of us have kind of went digital with our television and with our radio broadcast, and the real reason behind that isn't better quality. The reason behind that is because it allows one switch to kill the whole thing. And it's funny how that technology has been around for 30, 40 years, but they didn't decide to implement it until all of a sudden people like me and Alex and even people like you guys on Internet, hey, we need a kill switch for that. They start putting in those kill switches once we started taking territory.
Hey, can we jump into a couple of these issues that we talk about? And first off, Josh, to the point that you just said there with working on a, pretty much mainstream station and this kind of thing, how are you being received? I mean, the stuff that you're talking about, and, we always hear and we have concerns, those of us, me, CT, and Jay, and some of the people that might be here on Blog Talk, have some concerns that, you got government listening in, worried about what we're saying, or I don't know, that at some point when you start to be heard by a whole bunch of people, you reach the threshold, and now they're starting to look at you. You're GCN.
Yeah.
What's going on there? Are you feeling any pressure? Is there any kind of issue? Or?
Well, I think from our specific show perspective, I think we're received greatly because we do cover all these topics. There are some other shows that are great out there, and I could name them, and I really don't want to get into naming,
Yeah.
But we do a great job of crossing over. Within the office, we kind of have this slogan of, we're taking the alternative mainstream. And the alternative has been growing, but it remains the alternative. The cool thing about what we've been able to do is because we do come from a business background, we come from an entertainment background, we get to carry the alternative truth along with us as we talk about all these other things. Whereas some stations get pushed back, this is another conspiracy theory show. And we don't do that at all. There's not one day where we devote a whole show to a conspiracy theory. Matter of fact, whenever we bring up the topic, I always started with, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but. And it comes from that premise of, I don't want to push the truth down your throat. I want to lead you to it. I want to make you thirsty, so then when I take you to where I know where you want to go, you're going to be drinking. Now, from a governmental standpoint, are we seeing any pushback? I don't know. Just to be honest with you, and without sounding too conspiratorial, we have had our broadcast system messed with a couple times. We've had service techs out here that said, yeah, you know what, this was not an accident. I know that we have somebody who listens to the show 50 yards outside the front gate of the White House. So I'm sure we're popping up on somebody's radar, but it's not really...
It's not a big concern for you.
Right. Well, exactly. Right now, it's not a big concern for me, and it's not a big concern for them either. Because, see, what we have to realize is the adversary, whoever they are, they have strategy. They've been doing this for a long time. We've woken up to the fact that, hey, wait a second, I've been blinded and there's somebody against me. They've already known that. To have us here isn't really a threat to them. They planned for that. They knew it was coming.
Yeah.
So to them, it's not such a shocking revelation. They don't wake up in the morning and rush into a briefing room and say, oh, my goodness, turn on GCN. Did you hear what Alex just said? Or did you hear what Doug said? No, they already know it. So to them, it's not really a threat at this point. When it becomes a threat is when people actually start becoming happy Americans, when people actually start living out their freedom. When you and the people who are listening and when those people start saying, no, I want to retain my freedom, that's when the pushback happens. Because think about it. I'm not saying anything that the mainstream doesn't say. I mean, Alex points out conspiracy theories, and so does Washington, D.C. So what's the difference?
Yeah.
And in a sense, they know that's coming.
They literally said that Bilderberg was probably going to help Mitt Romney select Marco Rubio as his vice president. They said that. That was
right.
I think that was Washington Post, New York Times, one of the
right.
two.
And we have a tendency to point out how they point things out. We're like, oh, did you see they pointed that out? Or did you see they put that in a movie?
Yeah.
Or did you see they put that in the paper?
Right.
Well, then why do you think it's a threat when I say the same thing? It's not. I mean, if they're willing to say it, it's not a threat that I'm willing to say it.
I'd like to get your guys' take on this, because I look at it. I know for a fact they even listen to these shows here on Blog Talk Radio and
sure.
Search. They listen to everything, and for me, I'm glad they do, because the poor compartmentalized schmuck who's tasked with sitting down and listening to me for 3 hours is getting just as run down as the rest of us. His family is drinking the fluoride. His family's drinking the aspartame and the Diet Coke. They're getting all the same treatment that we are. Their 401ks have lost their value. That their housing market is now their house is underwater because they got this. They're under the same attack we are. So I'm planting the same seed with that poor schmuck as I do with the guy who I mentioned something in the Kroger down the street.
Absolutely, and yeah, exactly. It is a good point. And what's great about that is we've done that same thing. I say, hey, to anybody who's in some basement at the NSA listening to this show right now, I hope you had a great drive in, but do you notice you had the same crappy life that everybody else you're listening to had? So wouldn't it make more sense to realize you're on the same side as the people you're listening to, as opposed to the people who have control over you? Right. I know you can't stand up and say amen right now, but tell you what, on your ride home today, just give a little shout out and think next time before you take that next promotion. So it is all about changing the hearts and the minds of the people who they think they control. See, that's the real hook. That's the battle. This is never going to get to a point where, Bob is sitting on a hill someplace with his 30-06 saying, oh, you ain't going to take my gun. No, what this is really about, the hearts and the minds of the people in the middle. It's almost as if we're running an election. We're trying to get the minds of their people. They're trying to get the minds of our people, and whoever gets the most minds of the people seems to have the dominant control of the country. That's why freedom has always had ebbs and flows in it. That's why freedom is referred to as the breath of a nation, because it has to constantly be going in and out, in and out, in and out. So we're in a battle for votes. We're in the battle for hearts and minds.
So let me ask you there, Josh, to that point, have you ever seen, I don't know how old you are, but have you ever seen
34.
things as bad as this? And what I mean is our own government. It used to be that you had a fairly decent opinion that whatever's going on, the majority of the government is trying to do the right thing, so it'll be, dealt with or figured out at some point. Even like with Nixon and Watergate or Reagan and Iran-Contra, you just kind of, we felt more confident. I don't know if it's the right word, but right now you can't trust the government for anything. If they say it's raining outside, you don't believe it.
Well, I think that's a great question, but I don't think the biggest concern is the enemy that we think it is. Because people ask me, well, Josh, how can we win? And I said, well, it's quite simple. The Bilderbergers are all in their 70s and 80s. These dudes are going to fall over dead here pretty soon. So what we really need to be focusing on is not Queen Beatrice. We need to find her niece and nephew and teach them how great it is to be free. We need to teach them that when they get to the point where they say, hey, it's your time to inherit this, they have the moral clarity and the culture within their heart to say, you know what, I don't want it. But a bigger threat than that, in my opinion, is technology. I think we're getting to a point where both their side and our side are about to lose the grasp of this genie that we let out of the bottle. There's going to come a point where we can't control and they can't control what we've put into motion. And at that point, it's a completely different conversation.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a point where it will become it's going to have its own momentum, and you're not going to be able to put the brakes on. And that's really a beautiful thing. We reached that moment where the idea of individualism, freedom, and liberty is so ingrained. This is what I love about the Ron Paul campaign, because he has captured the hearts and minds of young people. 18, 19, 20, university-age people. These folks are in a position where, as they get older, they're going to remember all of this stuff, and they're not going to have any trust for the system the way it is, and they're going to do something about it.
Yeah, but are they going to have, and I don't mean to sound like a downer, but just a devil's advocate here for a second, are they going to have the ability to revolt against that system? I mean, once we get 30,000 drones in the air, once we get to this point where the FDA, like a lawsuit in Colorado, they claim that because you have stem cell treatment that you are literally a drug, and therefore they get to regulate you. We have facial recognition software. Well, right, but now we're to the point where it's beyond the people who implemented it. We can't put back in the bottle a computer software program that identifies and tracks 36 million people at a time. We can't get rid of that. So we're getting to this point where we have nanobots that deliver medicine. Well, we're not going to be able to get rid of that. It is getting to a point where it's beyond our control. Let's say it's 10 years down the road, and all of the crops on the planet seem to have some form of GMO. Well, there was a story on Natural News last Friday about how studies have shown now any damage that you do to your body, to your DNA structure, is going to now carry on to future generations indefinitely. So now we're fighting something that even the adversary didn't even intend to happen.
We don't know.
Third enemy.
They might have intended for it to happen.
Well, they're right. But at some point, it's going to take on its own inertia. They're not going to control it anymore either, whether it was their intention or not. But once it gets beyond anybody's control,
Well, and this is the point there, Josh, and this is something that I fight with, and I get in these strong debates with people, or on my show I get off into these rants, but it's past the point of reacting. We need to be proactive, and like you said, I'm not talking about any kind of violence or anything, but my point is that we have to see what's coming ahead of time and attack it before it comes. So, we've got this NDAA law. We got, it's unbelievable that the country would agree to allowing that an American can be taken away with no due process. That's just unbelievable to me. But and we talked earlier about, people have the different major things that they like to hold on to, and I do say that 911 is like the foundation of this stuff. All of this is allowed to happen because of
the springboard.
But since the evil terrorists are coming to get us, remember 911. Therefore, the Patriot Act, the warrantless wiretapping, the torture, the executive order to assassinate, the NDAA law,
Defense Authorization Act. We can go on and on.
It goes on and on. The TSA. So it's kind of like I would think. And it kind of reminds me of Star Wars, where the way to blow up the Death Star was you had to fly in and hit it right in that one right spot or something. But, it's kind of like this 911 thing has to be blown apart, that it has to be exposed for the evil lie that it is, so that all the rest of the stuff can crumble. It is what it appears. But, what's your take on it, Josh?
Well, it comes back to that strategy standpoint. Let's say we pull back the curtain and we find the wizard. Now what? Just because you know the wizard's there, if there's not a plan, it does us no good. And I understand. I mean, at some point we're going to have to pull back that curtain. But like if let's just hypothetically say that it was Sally Sundress who was responsible for 9/11. It was a plan that was hatched 40 floors down inside the Pentagon. Okay, you exposed it. Now what?
Well, let me ask you.
The very people who put the plan in are the very people you need to go to get Sally Sundress arrested in the first place. So now what?
Well, here's an answer. First off, I don't say that you necessarily need to point out that it's Sally Sundress. As long as we can point out that, everybody gets on board that, hey, this whole thing was a lie. There was some machinations that went on, then we can say, okay, get rid of the Patriot Act, get rid of the warrantless wiretapping, get rid of the TSA, get rid of Homeland Security, deconstruct all of this crap that was manufactured and constructed based on the fact of this 911. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it.
We're saying that now. The majority of this country doesn't want the Patriot Act. The majority of this country doesn't want NDA 2012. So we're at this point where it is exposed. And we're still at this point where we can say, okay, then what? And it's because we didn't focus on the right thing. We didn't focus on preserving that Constitution. And I tell my listeners this, culture creates candidates. Candidates do not create culture. We operate under the premise of, okay, we're going to find out what the truth is, and we're going to elect Dr. Paul, or we're going to elect Bob, and they know what's what, so all I have to do is elect them. And it doesn't work that way. We have to reinstitute personality. Right. See, what happens is the last time you've flown someplace, your flight attendant told you, if we were to go down, oxygen masks will deploy, put yours on first, and before you even help your child who's next to you. The reason being is if you're dead and in the aisle someplace, you're no help to your kid anyway. Well, what they've told us when it comes to how do we fix this country, how do we get liberty back, they've told us, well, you can't have a good personal life until you fix the community. You can't fix the community until you fix the state. You can't fix the state until you fix the nation. And now they're telling us you can't fix the nation until you fix the globe. That's what they're telling us, and we're buying into it. Instead, we need to realize we're going down, and just like in an airplane, we need to put on our liberty mask first. We need to start living life in our home as free people. And then we have to work with our neighbors to create liberty zones or whatever. You know, start developing watches and clubs and where you watch documentaries, listen to shows like this, whatever it happens to be. You start developing that culture. And then next thing you know, somebody in your culture is going to run for city council. And then you start taking over a city. And then you start taking over a county. And then when the federal government, which is a bigger giant to kill, starts saying things like, well, we want to implement, your county can say, well, you can do that, but you ain't doing it here, or we're going to arrest you on site. So you start creating pockets of liberty. And they're going to call it pockets of resistance, but in reality, it is pockets of liberation.
That's probably, exactly what they called the Founding Fathers when they were starting up the revolution. They called them pockets of resistance. And here's the thing. I mean, you look like an awful big jerk if you run around telling everybody to clean their yard up when you haven't bothered to pick up a rake in your own for years.
That's a good point.
And this leads me to, because we're talking about taking this individual effort and then working with the people around us, and I really want to talk about Paul Fest. And I've been plugging this a lot. I'm going to continue to plug it. We'll probably talk about it 2 or 3 more times before our time is up here. But one of the most beautiful things about this is the people that are organizing Paul Fest. They're not getting paid. They're not taking money for this. What they're doing is they're coming together in a grassroots effort to get the people down there to make a showing, not just for Dr. Paul, but for liberty, period. And that's the key for me. When I look at any of these different things, that's really what I look at first is, what was the motivation? Where is this thing going? And it's grassroots, man, at its purest. It
is, and that's why. So it's just a phenomenally exciting thing to be a part of. And people can go to paulfest.org or paulfest.com to find out more. But it really is beyond the candidate, and I think that's why the mainstream media is having such a hard time wrapping its mind around it here. Because for them, politically, it's all about candidates. We need Obama, or we need Romney, or we need Bush, or we need, whoever, Hillary. And it's all about the candidate. And for people who love liberty, it has nothing to do with the candidate. The candidate is just the one that is the spearhead to the movement in Washington, D.C. So they're having a hard time identifying why are you going to have this? It doesn't look like your nominee is going to win. Right. And what I keep telling people is, one, we don't know that. There's Rule 38, there's Rule 11. We don't know that. But two, it doesn't matter. Ron Paul has already won because Ron Paul's message has won. and his message is growing at an alarming rate. If we look back 4 years, the last election cycle, to this one, newsflash, Ron Paul is in the top 2 this time. And we seem to ignore that. We're like, well, he ain't doing that well. Okay, how well did he do 4 years ago? He's now in contention to win this thing. That is phenomenal. And the awareness factor, the acceptance factor, the strategy that's been in place has been working, and it's been waking people up, and people are starting to say, you know what, enough is enough. And that's what Paul Fest is all about, to come together and celebrate that. There's going to be great musicians, great speakers, great people. It's just going to be wonderful.
Now, I just want to jump in real quick, ABC. As the official spokesman for Paul Fest, what exactly do they have you tasked to do other than the obvious promotion of the event, which is, the main motivator for having you on? What else do they have you doing?
You know what? I have absolutely no clue. I know I'm going to be doing some speaking. I know I'm going to be doing some emceeing. I know I'm going to be doing some broadcasting from down there. I know I'm going to be speaking to some delegates. I'm just going to kind of be the guy to talk to about the event and why we're really there, and that's what's so exciting about it. And it's something that, they asked me to do it. I don't even know if it's official. They just say, hey, Josh, can you expand and kind of espouse upon our message here? And I said, sure, glad to do it. So that's kind of how this all came about.
So I went to the website, Paul Fest, and there's a when you get there, it's, what do you call it, a rolling bar or something, but there's one section that says Celebrities for Ron Paul. I'm assuming these people are going to be there, but Vince Vaughn, Kelly Clarkson, Corn's Jonathan Davis, Peter Schiff, John Mayer, Nolan Ryan, Joe Rogan, Aerosmith's Joe Perry, Oliver Stone. It just goes on and on. There's some big names down here. Gerald Salente, now, Judge Napolitano.
And I think Josh can expound on this more. I've had the travel coordinator Susan Wolf on a couple of times, and I've been trying to get her to give me a little bit of a little scoop here and there, and she's been real coy with me about it. But as far as I know, they actually haven't confirmed any of those guys. They have confirmed a couple. You had the country act on your show not that long ago, Josh. I cannot remember their name.
Burns and Poe. The country act with Burns and Poe. We also had Misfits former lead singer Michael Graves. He was on the show. You're right about that list. That's just a broad list of people who are in the celebrity world who are endorsers of Ron Paul. Yes. You're correct that there's not an official list out yet. I know that they're working on that. So there's a little bit of discrepancy there between the list you see and who's going to appear. But the bottom line is, whoever appears is there for the right reason. And the list doesn't serve as a reason to go. It just serves as a shining light to the fact that, this liberty message is starting to have an impact into that celebrity world. And a lot of people say, well, Josh, we're for liberty and freedom. We shouldn't care what the celebrities think. And, there's a little bit of merit to that. But if we look at history and how humans interact, there is a place for culture. Culture is very important, and entertainers are a huge part of that. So when you start winning over the hearts and minds of entertainers, you start influencing that culture. You start cleaning that water, so to speak, and that has a huge compound effect to it.
It goes back to your analogy about the gym owner. You can go out there and you can talk about liberty and you can talk about, Ron Paul's message, but let's face it, we have a fast food culture nation now, and they like having that. Oh, I like Joe Rogan Fear Factor. Oh, I like this. they have that as a hot button. So you lay that out there. And it will attract people to come look at, why is Vince Vaughn introducing Ron Paul?
Right. That's a good point.
And plus, people operate on different paths and in different ways. Who I connect with is completely different who, Amy Allen, for example, would connect with. She's a good-looking woman who's a singer. Obviously, I'm a short, stocky guy with a beard and a gruff personality. So we're going to connect with people differently, and whoever connects with people and gets them down there, that's the important thing, not really who did it.
And I think that's a very good point, is the diversity in here. You know, they've got Prodigy from Mobb Deep, a rap guy. You got Gerald Celente, and then you got the Aerosmith guy. It's just a very wide list, which shows the appeal. And to that point, you know, I know that CT has mentioned this a couple of times, but hopefully along the way we can also communicate to people that it's what he represents. You know, it's the idea, it's the ideals. It's not Ron Paul. You know, there's not this cult. We don't want to make it a cult of personality. You know, it's all about the idea of freedom, and that's a simple way to sum it up. It's about freedom, you know.
Well, exactly, and it's also about getting back to diversity, because you nailed it, and we talked about it in the first hour. When you see a rapper up on stage with, you know, the lead guitarist for Aerosmith, you obviously know that this isn't your normal place to be. So what's really great about this is the idea that we don't need to be divided. See, the adversary loves divide and conquer. They divide us over money, they divide us over race, they divide us over sex, they divide us over income bracket. And when you see something like Ron Paul that's not about a person and it's not about groupthink, it's about individualism, it allows us to be individuals once again. And it allows us to say, hey, you know what? You're different from me, but you still want the same thing. And when you talk to your liberal neighbor or your conservative neighbor or your libertarian neighbor, if you really talk to them, they all want the basic things. They all want to be free. They all want to have the opportunity to eat healthy food. They want to be able to live without being controlled. But those are never the topics politicians talk about. They talk about things like tax brackets, and it never made sense to me why I would fight my neighbor over a 23% tax bracket or 27% tax bracket. And in reality, what we should be doing is uniting together, since we're both taxed in the first place, against the one doing the taxing. And I think that's why they view Ron Paul as such a threat, because he's allowing people to say, hey, you know what? We can be different but united.
And I think that, you know, when it comes to, you know, diversity, there is no celebration of diversity, you know, more potent than the exercising of one's individuality. You know, that's the kicker. That's why Paul's message, which is, you know, the message of freedom, reaches out so far into all these different groups. I mean, you go to a Ron Paul rally and you see, you know, every race represented. You see every socioeconomic background represented. You see every religious background represented, because those things are minor issues that mean nothing. You hit the nail on the head. When you start talking, I had a Romney supporter on a couple weeks back, you know, and we had a kind of a Paul versus Romney discussion. And you know what? We ended up agreeing on a whole bunch of stuff, because it's simple. People want to be able to take care of their families. They want to be able to make sure that, you know, the mortgage and the rent's made. It's not a complicated issue. And if we set aside the stupid stuff that doesn't matter and take care of the big issues, the small stuff's going to work itself out while we're handling the big issues.
Well, absolutely, because right now it's illegal to collect rainwater in 17 states.
Yeah.
So that's not a topic. You can't collect water in 17 states, but we're going to argue about how many vehicles the Board of Education should have? I mean, come on. I mean, we need to focus on the important thing. Einstein said the important thing is to keep the important thing the important thing. And we've gotten away from that.
Well, don't you think that was purposeful, though, Josh? Or
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That was Penn and Teller, man, magic trick. Hey, you have to worry about this, and then while you're worried about that, they kick you in the groin.
That's that distraction that we were talking about, and that's what I say with, you know, I often talk about how these people take your humanity and use it against you, and a perfect example is the hate crimes. You know, now I'm a black guy. You know, I feel more than anybody, at least probably between you two guys, I absolutely feel like, man, these people that are, you know, being hateful and committing crimes with that in their heart, I can't stand them. They can go to hell. However, murder is murder. So if somebody murders somebody, just charge them with murder. Somebody assaulted somebody, just charge them with assault. This thing with hate crimes is a ruse. It's a lie, fraud, and that's where they take your humanity, your compassion and sympathy for somebody being treated, unfairly, and they flipped it like jujitsu. Again, hey, I really hate that somebody's being a racist. Well, okay, so we're going to make a special law. But what they did is they take that and they're using it against, if you, what was it? The one guy that, the college guy that filmed his gay roommate having sex or something. They got some harsh crime against him. This kind of thing, they pervert nature is what they do, this cabal.
Well, and it opens us up to a terrible ramification because we seem to think so non-strategically. We don't think about what might happen next. Let's say you pass hate crime legislation and we use it in gay crime, for example. Well, what happens when a staunch right-winger gets in there and can use the same hate crime that now says, well, being gay is hate? Right. Well, I didn't think about that. Well, why don't we just have crime be crime?
Exactly.
Once we start into this idea of regulating ourselves, and that's the problem. We've regulated ourselves. And what we have to realize is a loss of freedom for anybody is a loss of freedom for everybody. Yeah. Whether you decided to use that freedom or not is completely up to you, but you still lost it.
Right.
I've been telling people that exact thing on this issue of gay marriage. First off, it strikes me as really strange that the party who screams for limited government wants more government in the bedroom. It seems really odd to me in that regard. But, when you open the door up on any issue for the government to come in and control that situation, you've opened the door up for them to do it to everyone. For those Christians who want to see a federal ban on gay marriage, they're not understanding that you've opened the door up for them to decide who can and can't consent to a relationship. So that leaves them open for them to come in now and tell you, hey, by the way, you can't have your Bible meeting. There's more than 4 people here.
Well, what they did there was really, from their perspective, strategically brilliant in the first place. Because until early last century, we didn't get involved in recognizing marriage as a government anyway. That was put in place because they wanted to fight interracial marriages. But what they've done now is they've been able to use that, flip it, twist it, put a different flavor on it, and now what they've really done is created a divide between both sides. One side wants to be married, and what's so just foolishly ironic about that is that they want the very recognition that causes division. Meanwhile, the other side wants to cause division in order to prevent the recognition. And how it started before this whole push to have the government involved in your marriage in the first place was members of a faith recognize that marriage. So let's say you were Lutheran. Well, then your Lutheran church recognized your marriage. If you were Catholic or Buddhist or something, you didn't care about Lutheran marriage, and the Lutherans didn't care about you because your marriage was only important and sanctified or whatever through your faith. Once we started getting the government involved in saying anybody is married or not, that's where we lost the value of marriage itself. Because no longer is it something that has real deep love and spiritual value. It then became a legally binding contract first, and everything else became second. So we lost what's really important. So what we should really be fighting for, from both the gay standpoint and the defense of marriage standpoint, is everybody should be fighting for government to not recognize anybody's marriage. And then we wouldn't have to worry about which exceptions or asterisks we have to put after this thing. Just get them out of it altogether.
Well, let me say, and I'm probably in the minority here because I am totally against discrimination and hatred and all this stuff. But I believe that that there is a homosexual agenda. So I think that they're promoting this whole thing, and this Obama's the gay president. He's pushing the homosexual stuff through the military and through this marriage stuff and all that. However, what I have said is what you said there, Josh. I've said that the point is that it should not be normalized. Now, if that means that they shouldn't be, legally, technically married, then I mean that. But the other option, which I accept, to what you just said there, let's just take government out of it, and then people can be married through their church, or what about the people that's not religious? Like I don't belong to a denomination. Go ahead.
Well, let me give you an example. From a Catholic standpoint, a Catholic priest, literally, if he's really a Catholic priest, won't recognize you as married if you're a man and a woman and you're married outside the church anyway. So is the next step going to be, well, a man and a woman aren't married unless they're Catholic? So I mean, that kind of flows into the ridiculousness of this.
Right.
If the Catholics aren't going to recognize a marriage, then why do I have to? Or why do I not have to? Or why do I have to weigh in on it at all? And you're right about an agenda, but that agenda is true with every group. There's a right-wing agenda, a left-wing agenda, a gay agenda, a straight agenda, a gun agenda, because they understand the more they can divide us,
the
better it is. And if there's a married gay couple out there, do they really find it offensive that the Catholics don't view them as married? No. They only find it offensive that the government doesn't. And why is that? Because we place so much value on what the government says our value is. A Buddhist doesn't worry about Christian prophecy. A gay guy doesn't worry about Catholic doctrine. They've already got beyond those steps, and we're all focused on, well, what does the government say my value is?
Right.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's about these people, when they choose to engage in their individual consensual relationship, are not receiving the same government recognition. They're not allowed to put each other on their insurances. There's inheritance law, all of these different things, and that's really where you see the big problem. Again, just get the government out of the way and let the contract, if that's what it's going to be as a contract, then let them make it. It's an individual decision.
Well, and that's exactly it. And what's so amazing about that is that message then attracts people who are pro-gay marriage, people who are anti-gay marriage, people who don't care. Everybody can fall under that tent of get the government out of the way. Because like I said, if I'm non-Catholic and I marry my girlfriend, I don't care if the Catholic doesn't recognize my marriage. Who cares? I don't believe in what they believe in. So once we get the government out of the way, we can all be individuals, all disagree, and allow ourselves the freedom to disagree.
And on the flip side of that, if I don't want to, if I really don't want to have the state involved in my relationship, nothing stops me from going and having, some little ceremony or some whatever you want to call it with Amy. If I want to go do that, and we want to stand in front of our friends and family and say, I am bonded to this woman because I love her, because she's a part of my soul, I don't have to go get a marriage license to do that. I can make that choice, go do it, and then live my life that way.
Well, exactly. And what has happened is a lot of us have replaced God with the government. And if you don't have a spiritual faith, then that's your thing. But talking to those who do, we've now decided, well, we're not married until we get that marriage license. Well, if you really believe in a God, do you really think he cares about your puny little government? So it has nothing to do with your government. It has to do with you, your wife, husband, whatever, and God. And we've replaced them. And a marriage is only one point. We've replaced them in so many things. The government should tell us who we are. The government should tell us what we do. We're coming to the end of the show, and I want to use something to illustrate a point here. When I go out and I speak on business, which is one of my favorite things, I take with me a textbook from the 1930s. And it's a 7th grade textbook. It's less than a pound. It's only 5 inches long, less than an inch thick. And one of the chapters is how to select employees. Another one is how to set up distribution streams. And if I look at a 7th grade textbook today, it's going to weigh about 20 pounds. It's going to be a foot by a foot. And it's going to have nothing but repetition. And it comes back to a related issue. We've let the government decide what we need to learn. Well, I can take this 7th grade textbook and teach a business person how to be successful, but I couldn't teach anybody anything out of a current 7th grade textbook because, once again, we've let the government decide our value and what should and should not be important to us.
I like to occasionally lob a softball at my guests because I think it leads into some interesting conversations. And looking at, your guest history on the website, you've had a wide variety of great guests. And, just FYI, my interview with you has led me to an interview next week with a Billy Rock, Amanda from YouTube. You've had her on.
Cool. Yeah, I have.
But you've had some great guests on, the former Prime Minister of Israel, Michael Schur, has been on, all of these different people. Who has been your favorite interview?
We are missing approximately 70 guests off of that list. That list is even longer. It's just amazing who we've had on the show. I think if I were to look back, and I thought this was going to be a softball question, man. That's a hard question. If I were to look back at all the guests who were on the show and say who was, that's like saying which of your fingers is your favorite. I mean, it's so hard to say, hey, I enjoyed this one. They've all been so unique and so entertaining. I mean, some of the ones that stick out are some of the hot button issues. Israeli politicians; those are always interesting. I think one of the most fascinating ones was a guy named Michael Rood. Michael Rood is, a teacher or something within what's called first century Christianity, and that is just a mind trip to think about how this corruption goes back literally like 1900 years. I mean, it's nuts when you go down that rabbit hole. So that was probably one of our funnest. I know Kenny Thomas, he's a country star. He's been on the show. That was pretty fun. Man, it's just so hard. It's really hard to pick one. We had Ben Swan. That was a good one. A lot of people know who Ben Swan is. Adam Kokesh has been on a couple times.
I was going to ask you, Josh, and what's that? CT stole my thunder there, but there was two guests that I saw that you had that I was interested in. Michael Schur, which I think is important because he was a CIA guy,
yep.
And he has spoken strongly against these wars and what's happening, the militarization, and how this our position, our stance in the Middle East doesn't make sense. It's not good for America. And then the other one being the Israeli ambassador representative. I've spoken quite a bit about how, just my take on it is that these wars are for Israel. We're Israel's military.
Right.
And it's funny how that. Well, it's not funny, but it's interesting how. We talked earlier, what are the results of 911? Well, the result is that we're over there fighting all these wars for Israel. And now, again, that's my take on it. But you've spoken with that Israeli ambassador and you've spoken with Michael Schur. What's your takeaway from these wars in the Middle East?
Well, I think, again, it comes down to a strategic positioning. There's, especially within the GOP, since we're looking at the nomination for that party, there's a large contingent of America that does have some sort of religious faith, and that's why they support Israel. And it kind of goes behind the scripture that says those who bless Israel will be blessed and those who curse Israel will be cursed. So there's a lot of support for Israel because of that. And I think that we don't understand what it truly means to bless Israel. And if you are one of the people who believe that we need to bless Israel, then one of the best things you can do is to get out of the way. And that's kind of why Dr. Paul is the biggest pro-Israel candidate, because he's saying to them, you know what, we don't need to interfere with you. And the Israeli prime minister said, you know what, you don't need to interfere with us. So it's only the politicians over here who actually use and abuse and curse Israel by saying, hey, we're going to fund you, you're going to take it, and no, by the way, we're going to fund all of your enemies too. Strategically, defang the snake, man. I mean, stop funding all of Israel's enemies. Let Israel defend herself, and she creates enough revenue through trade with other nations where she has the budget to create her own military. Now, even if you're an anti-Israeli mindset, Ron Paul, again, is the choice for you, because it gets back to, you know what, we don't need to be involved in this thing. If they're going to do something, they're going to do it, and it's none of our business. And that fulfills both of those people's ideologies. You can bless Israel by getting out of the way, and you don't have to be involved with Israel by getting out of the way.
And frankly, we're sending $8 million in aid to them. We have, billions and billions more going out all over the Middle East. We really, when you get right down to it, we are funding these conflicts all the way around the board. We're the best friend and the worst enemy for Saudi Arabia, and the best friend and the worst enemy for Israel, because we're putting arms in both their hands.
Right.
Exactly, and then we're picking the fight between the two. So we're actually the agitator. We'll go to Saudi Arabia and say, hey, it's their fault. They'll go to us and say, hey, it's Saudi Arabia's fault. And Egypt and Libya are another perfect example. Here we have two countries that are literally flying the Al-Qaeda flag. They're ran by the Muslim Brotherhood, an organization that we put on the terrorist list, right? So if it's illegal to fund Al-Qaeda, yet our State Department gives them $1.8 billion in funding, didn't we just fund the very enemy that it's illegal to fund?
Thank you. Exactly.
Problem, reaction, solution. We had them, according to, the mainstream media, we had them beat, we had them defeated. Well, we can't have that. We got to keep that boogeyman going.
Exactly.
Can't have that. I tell you what, we've got just a couple minutes coming up before this next break. Let's just go ahead and take it early. That way, if you've got to leave, Josh, you can here on the flip side.
I got a jet. I'm sorry about that, but I gotta go.
I know how it is. I tell you what, go ahead and plug your show, plug your projects and stuff, and just tell us what's coming up next for you.
Well, we got Paul Fest, obviously, so go to paulfest.org or paulfest.com. We host a show Monday through Friday, 9 to 11 Central. Call your local station if they don't have it. Seriously, call them. They love to hear from you. And if you don't have it on the station near you yet, go to joshtolley.com. There's bunches of ways to listen, iPhone apps and gcnlive.com. We air right before Alex Jones. We're kind of a lead-in show for him. We have the book, Quit Your Job or Die, Discover the Importance of Self-Employment. That's at bookstores everywhere, and, of course, again, at joshtolley.com. And then we're working on a bunch of stuff. We have tons of guests coming up. We've had well over 100. We're missing, I said, probably 70 off of the website. Just amazing stuff coming up on the show. And we encourage people to get involved. Don't just listen to what we have to say. Start developing your life. Sit down with your wife or your girlfriend, boyfriend, or yourself for that matter, and start thinking about what's important for you. The next book we have coming out is Who Shot My Duck, the definitive work on finally getting those ducks in a row. Because I talk to so many people and they say, oh, well, Josh, I'll pick up the torch for liberty when I get my ducks in a row, or I'll get married when I get my ducks in a row. And I started asking people, well, what are your ducks? And nobody ever knew. They said, well, if you don't know, then how can you possibly know if they're in a row or not? And I was in a park one day and realized, you know what, ducks never get in a row until they're actually going someplace. Then they get in a row. So we're working on that. We're just working on a ton of stuff, and we're just, I guess the best thing to do is follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, all those sites, and joshtolley.com to keep up with everywhere we're going.
Right on. Yeah, and anytime you got anything you want to promote, anything you want to talk about, man, I'll always have an open mic for you here. We'll make time and we'll get it worked out.
Well, it was a blast being on with you guys. I do a lot of interviews, and very few of them were this fun. So I appreciate the opportunity, and yeah, I'll be back.
Fantastic.
Great talking to you, man.
All right, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.
And there he goes, boys and girls. That's Josh Tolley. Again, that website is joshtolley.com. And don't forget that there's also paulfestival.org. He's obviously affiliated with joshtolley.com because it's got his name on it. But, he's doing the, spokesperson work for Paul Fest, and, just having a guy of his caliber. This is a rising star, in the alternative media, and for him to come on, give us his time, that's great stuff. ABC, man, it's break time. Are you ready to piss off some fake conservatives?
Yeah, we can go at it.
All right, that's what we'll do. All right, boys and girls, remember there will be no 3-minute warning, okay? There's no 3-minute warning, so if you got anything you got to run for, the break is the time to do it, and if not, sit down and listen to what we've got to offer. Maybe you guys can find something that'll help you educate people around you. I'm Kerry Corn. This is my boy ABC. We're going to pay the rent, and we'll be back on the flip side with a little bit more Face the Facts.
Five Star Shine carries the world's best accessories for your vehicle, including their world-famous 5-Star Shine paint protection system. 5-Star Shine protects your vehicle with a super slick coating of PTFE. PTFE is used in the U.S. space program and is the same material used to make non-stick cookware. 5-Star Shine actually keeps your vehicle cleaner with a dazzling shine. To see 5-Star Shine and all their other products, go to 5starshine.com. That's the number 5starshine.com, or you can go to latenightinthe-midlands.com and click the 5-Star Shine menu option.
Are you ready for more than just a job that barely makes ends meet? Have you ever considered a home-based business where your earning potential is limitless? Where you decide how much you want to make for you and your family? Where you can be part of one of the most explosive and upcoming industries in the world? Be a part of a company that is poised and ready to explode into 24 countries in the near future. We're looking for leaders to help others with their health, wealth, and purpose. How about being a part of a community of people who want to bring awareness and change lives with health, wealth, and purpose? For more information, please call toll-free 888-598-3030. Working together, we can bring dreams, purpose, and happiness for all mankind. To learn how you can get started working with our exciting team now, call 888-598-3030. That number again is 888-598-3030. Or click the home business link at project.nsearch.com, latenightinthe-midlands.com, or our new social network site, nsearch.com. NSearch is calling on good people around the world to spread the truth about things such as God, free energy, natural cures, or anything else that can help humanity in these dark days. No one can stop us when we work as a team to spread the truth, and that's why we created Team NSearch. Right now, we need people to post and share information on social network at nsearch.com and project.nsearch.com. We could also use some dependable people handing out our business cards and flyers whenever they can. If you'd like to help NSearch in any way, contact Glenn Kennedy on his website at www.project.nsearch.com. We also encourage as many of you as possible to add us to Skype ID team.nsearch so we can quickly reach you that way also. You can get access to electronic versions of our flyers and business cards by going to the Help menu option at nsearch.com. Print them out on your own computer, or use them on vistaprint.com to print your own. You can also purchase a box of our business cards through our Help page on NSearch. We highly encourage our listeners to get the free Skype program and add us through Skype ID team.nsearch. This is the most reliable way we can reach you. Join Team NSearch, spreading the truth around the world today, and may God bless all your efforts.
Trendy.
Why do you think I played that, boys and girls? Why do you think that it is that I ran that particular piece of audio? Because what ABC and I are about to do is attack the trendies. Okay, there are different types of trendies, and in this case, we're looking at the fake conservatives, people who call themselves conservative, and they have this particular belief system, and they refuse to budge on any tenet of their ideology, even when it's blatantly wrong. ABC, you've been doing a show on a network that is neocon, to say the least. You know, you're taking the message to the unwashed masses, which, you know, is something that I try to do when I go on the different shows, trying to reach a different audience here. So I'd like to give you the floor to start this thing off. What is your main gripe when you're dealing with a neocon?
Well, I guess the main gripe is that there's no real discussion, and this is a neocon or one of these strong liberals that are into,
I'm a progressive.
Yeah, progressive. But particularly with the neocons, their whole thing is talking about it's this liberal ideology that came over, and it's it's the communists and it's the liberals and it's the lefties and the Democrats and all this stuff, and there's no acknowledgement or recognition of the 8 years that we had under Bush. They don't accept or acknowledge the debt that was driven up under Reagan or Daddy Bush, so that they're totally unwilling to entertain the idea that Republicans have contributed towards these problems that we're in now.
Yeah, when you look at the establishment GOP and all of their talk about reduction of the size of government, show me, just since I've been alive, I'm 34 just like Josh is, show me since I've been alive where a Republican has reduced the size of government. Show me.
Right.
Because it just grows. It's bigger and it gets bigger and it gets bigger. What Obama's done now is been made entirely possible by what Bush built in the first place. The warrantless wiretapping, the Patriot Act, the John Warner Defense Authorization Act, the PDD 51, these executive orders, not a one of which got rescinded, Guantanamo Bay, all of these things were built during Bush-Cheney, and Obama-Biden has changed nothing.
Exactly. And then to make it even worse is they will bring up these false accusations or lies. They'll create lies to attack their opponents. And I'll give a perfect example. For the longest, the talking point was that Obama was a Muslim, secret Muslim, sympathizer of the Muslims, that he hated Israel and this kind of thing. Well, he's killing a bunch of Muslims. He's so efficient at it now that he's using the the drones to do it. So what kind of Muslim is killing all of his Muslim brethren? And then as to Israel,
that talking point, we discussed this talking point. He's a Muslim Marxist socialist. Well, wait a minute. By its very definition, on its face, the Marxist and the Muslim do not coexist because Marxism replaces religion with the state.
There you go. Right. And it just shows the stupidity of it. And what makes it worse is there's obviously stuff to go after him for because he's doing the same thing as Bush. You got the executive order to assassinate people. You got the NDAA law. And you got the Obamacare that's forcing people to go out and buy a private product. But we don't hear him attacking him on that. And I think that the reason is obvious. It's because that they know that Bush was doing the same kind of thing as far as, the taking away our rights and the Patriot Act and the warrantless wiretapping, invasion our privacy and all this kind of stuff. So they don't want to get started down that road. So they focus on stuff like secret Muslim and he hates Israel and this kind of thing.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
If you even bother to do the base research on it, it's ridiculous. And
right.
and let's be clear, the history of Obama links him with Muslims. It does. He spent time in Muslim countries and went to a school where you had to be a professed Muslim to go. It does. There's no question of that. but his behavior and his actions should dictate your opinion of the man, not what some ridiculous talking head idiot has got up and told you to believe. And that's my biggest problem with these people. That is my biggest. They don't think for themselves in a lot of these cases. You know, just because Andrew Breitbart said it to be true doesn't make it true. Just because Rush Limbaugh says it's true doesn't make it true. You gotta I don't ask you to believe everything I'm saying. Go do this research for yourself and find out. I'm probably not telling you it's as worse as it really is.
I actually got into a bit of a maybe debate or argument.
A scrum?
Yeah, scrum with a couple of these guys the other night talking about feminism. And what it was I proposed, or I stated, that Sarah Palin is a feminist, and that we never hear these right-wing, the Republicans, conservatives, call her out for being a feminist. However, you know, we often have heard the right, the Republicans, the conservatives, rail on the idea of feminism and all this kind of thing. Which I think that feminism is another tool. It's another trick to play on people. But
create that groupthink.
Right. So I said, so why don't we ever hear you guys, you know, Republicans rallied behind Sarah Palin. They pushed her up. They wanted her. They all thought she was great, but she's a feminist. And, man, they attacked me on that. But what was funny was one lady, it was all guys that were attacking me. One lady called in and said, I'm so glad you said it. She said, you're exactly right. And I love that, but it showed and I actually kind of went off on everybody on this, saying that they were a bunch of hypocrites. You know, not the lady, but these guys, they call themselves conservatives and, you know, all this kind of stuff. Saying, you know, you're a hypocrite. You're willing to yell out and talk about Hillary Clinton or whoever being a feminist. But here we have Sarah Palin, 5 kids, the baby's got Down syndrome, but she's ready to run for vice president of the United States. You know, how much time does that take up? You know, you got a baby with Down syndrome. How
where's that quality of care going?
There you go. And plus you got 5 kids. And then one of the guys mentioned how she wasn't a feminist. He was giving all of his reasons. And he happened to mention that, you know, her daughter had a kid out of wedlock, and she didn't hide her. She brought her up front and showed everybody that, hey, it's not a mistake, and you be proud of them. And I told him, that's exactly the wrong thing to do. If she's a conservative, you know, if you're pushing conservative and traditional values, why would you take your kid that made a mistake, and it was a mistake, and not that you don't support them, you always support your kids, but you don't have to pull them up to the forefront and show everybody, look, here's my daughter that had a baby out of wedlock, you know, partying with her friends, and now she got a kid out of wedlock, you know, and to put it crudely, a bastard kid. Yeah, hey, let's put this out there as representation of what's positive and good in America. That ain't conservative.
And getting straight into that, I mean, yeah, let's talk about the root of the word is conserve.
Right.
Which means to, you know, I don't want to say, it means to you know, have a very low threshold for waste.
Right.
So how can you call yourself a conservative and support the overseas adventurism?
Exactly.
The empire. How can you call yourself a conservative and support foreign aid by the billions when we can't take care of our business at home? How do you call yourself a conservative when we're cutting the police force and we're cutting teachers, but we want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year pumping fluoride, an unnecessary chemical, an industrial waste product, into our water? Don't tell me you're a conservative. You're just as progressive as Hillary Clinton.
And that would have some people's heads explode for you to say that. But you're exactly right. And I've actually argued that too. You know, how do you say that you're a conservative when you actually agree with the Patriot Act. You agree with these wars. You know, you agree with warrantless wiretapping and all of this. But you say you're a conservative. You know, you agree with Homeland Security. What kind of conservatism is that?
If you're a conservative, you should want to conserve the rights and the rules set down by the Constitution. Right. But yet you seem to turn a blind eye every time it's one of your guys doing this mess. Look at this NDAA. You know, it was really weird to watch both sides of this because that bill was presented bipartisan.
Exactly.
That was put together by McCain and Levin, a Republican and a Democrat.
Right.
So to watch that was just like the most beautiful thing, watching that reaction, because they didn't know whether they should yell about it or accept it. They were confused. They didn't have a talking points flashcard for that.
Right.
You know, so you got some people that were critical of it and some people that weren't. The fact of the matter is, you know, these neocons, these fake conservatives, they are fake. They have taken over the Republican Party. They have been purchased and placed there by the very same banking institutions that gave you Barack Obama. You have been divided and fed a steady diet of crap, and the problem with that is you're a regurgitator, so all you're regurgitating to me is crap.
That's exactly how I put it too when I was speaking with them. You know, you can imagine that doesn't go over very well. They just get irritated. But you know, I tell you, there's a bit of a frustration level when you're trying to communicate, because I'm interested in having a discussion. So you know, when these things come up, I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about this. Tell me why you say that, because I'm looking at this, and this, but you say that you still support this guy when he did all this. So let's talk about it. Why? And then they just get irritated. You know, you're a liberal, this and that, and all that kind of stuff. It's silly, actually, but it shows you, you know, dealing with that up front in a conversation gives you a good idea of how deep the conditioning goes, because that's what it is conditioning. Brainwashing, you know, however you want to define it, but these people are programmed. I mean, and I have said all of us have been programmed. All of us have. And what happens, and for those of us who, you know, again, truther or however you want to put it, what's happened with us is that there's a degree of deprogramming that happens. You know, you get a hold of one story and you're like, wow, what's that about? And we talked about that earlier with Josh, you know, how you come into this. You know, you start inquiry. And you're like, well, that doesn't sound right. What is that about? Let me Google this. And you get one story that talks about a little extra stuff, and then you start Googling that. And then you find out there's people like Alex Jones out there, or Gerald Celente, and you know, these different people, and you're like listening to these people, and it's kind of like, man, that makes sense. Let me see. I mean, there's got to be some guy that's coming back at this stuff. And when you listen to the people who are trying to address what the Alex Joneses or the Gerald Celentes are saying, then it's pretty apparent. You know, they don't really, what these people do, and it's the same with these neocons, they won't address the specific proposition or assertion that's made, say, from a Gerald Celente or something. They'll talk around it. They'll say things like, you know, you hate America. You know,
that's a talk. Yeah, they've got their, you know, they've taken the lesson from the Limbaughs and the Sean Hannitys of the world, because that's how they handle their callers. And we go listen to a show, anybody who disagrees with them on any topic, they piss on them.
Right.
You know, they question their, you know, their patriotism, they question their intelligence, and they hang up on them. They do not have an honest discussion with anybody.
Right.
and that's a big problem. They've been conditioned to believe that's how you handle someone who doesn't agree with you. We've reached a point where, with your mainline Democrats and your mainline Republicans, both sides are guilty of this in this false left-right paradigm, where they believe that their way is the right way, no matter what. There is no gray area. There is no compromise. It's gang warfare, and they're fighting over drug turf.
And, it's kind of funny that you say that, but it really is. These people act like the mob. I mean, they eliminate the competition, like with the drug wars. Anybody that's going against the official narrative, they deal with them, whether they have to literally eliminate them like death, or, they humiliate them, marginalize them, and they control the media. So, it's a simple thing to do. You have ABC, NBC, Fox News, all of these shows saying the same thing. ABC from Blog Talk is a nut job. ABC from Blog Talk is a nut job. ABC from Blog Talk is a nut job.
Conan O'Brien is pushing the envelope. Conan O'Brien is pushing the envelope. They made a point of that on YouTube. And that's the thing. Josh talked about this, from his area of doing the show. Unlike these Limbaughs and Hannitys, he doesn't have writers. He's off the cuff. He has a couple of people that help him do his research, and he comes on. And this is why his show is so good to me, and that's why I listen to Alex as well, is it's not scripted. When people are talking about this is why you're so good. It's because it's a matter of passion. It's off the cuff, and we're speaking from the truth. I defy Sean Hannity to do an unscripted show with let's just put him on air, and all the producer's job is to make sure that the commercials get run. But we're doing this stuff on our own and running the commercials, okay? We don't have producers, but let's see him one day off the cuff, no writers, no agenda, nothing handed to him on a silver platter to put out there, and let's see how good his show is then. Let's take away the flashcards.
That's a good point. I thought it was really interesting, and I totally agree with it when you and Josh were talking about how as far as communicating to people and bringing them into this awareness that things aren't what they seem, that rather than browbeating them and beating them over the head with information, you kind of ask the question. And I tell you honestly, that's where I'm coming from, and that's how I've kind of operated for a while. And that's what I do over on Conservative Primetime. I will ask the question, hey, I'll definitely tell you my opinion. But then I'll say, hey, if you think differently, call in. And people call in and, they want to tell me where I'm wrong. And that's fine. I'm totally open to all of that. So my position is, okay, let's have a dialogue. So this is what I'm thinking. So tell me why this is wrong. And, it's pretty obvious. You can tell if somebody's got a strong argument or not. As I said, when they come into this thing of, don't you love America, or they're killing us for our freedoms. That kind of stuff is pretty weak.
What freedoms? Where are these magical freedoms?
Right.
You're getting your genitals felt up at the airport, and if you're not that, you have to walk through the cancer machine, and you can't leave if you don't want to do either of those. You have to stay, and they call the police on you. Okay, where are these freedoms? When you want to redress your government and they force you into a free speech zone, where's that in the Constitution? Where are these freedoms? When they SWAT team the people handing out raw milk, when the police shut down a lemonade stand, where are these magical freedoms you're talking about? Because we stopped fighting for them a long time ago.
Right.
And they've been taken away. How do they hate us for something that we allowed to be taken away?
Well, that's something else that we talked about earlier there with Josh is, he mentioned about having a strategy, and I definitely can appreciate that. The other part of it is, as I was trying to communicate to him is, you know, it's enough just to get people to wake up to the fact that we've been lied to and, you know, this kind of thing. But then along with that is things have moved so fast. So much has been done, and things continue to move at such a rapid pace that we have to be in the mode of almost like predicting what's going to come down the road, you know, seeing ahead. So, you know, when you see things like this NDAA law pass and this, you know, the different stories about the FEMA camps and empowered more powers given to the police and stories about how the garbage men and postal people are being enlisted to help spy on people. You know, I mean, you got to put two and two together and be like, hey, wait a minute, you know, the walls are closing in around here. Every time I turn around, somebody's looking out for this and that, and hell, you know, I mean, I ain't free to come and go. It's, you know, there's always the opportunity that somebody's monitoring me, and I'm not saying that, you know, all of us need to live in fear that, you know, you step out your door and everybody's staring at you, but I'm saying that these people are have set up the infrastructure so that, you know, at any time, once they decide, okay, listen, that damn ABC, that guy's been talking too much crap. I think he might be a terrorist. You know, they can say whatever they want to say and come after you.
And frankly, they have the technology now that if they really wanted to, they could have me on the 5 o'clock news in my tighty-whities on top of a school bus firing Twinkies off at toddlers.
Right.
And you know, everybody would be like, wow, what is CT did? Wow, CT has lost his ever-loving gourd. Right, well, exactly. I tell you what, Kerry Corn is not going to run out in his underwear and fire Twinkies off it. It's not happening. You know, it's not. But they could make it look that way, and that's. You know, the reason why I'm taking this swing right now at what I consider fake conservatives versus taking the swing at these progressive people is because these progressive people are the way that they are, and they're happy with it. They're proud of it. The problem is you know, this other side is professing to be something, and they're not.
Right.
You know, if you're going to say that you are, then just like that, what I was talking about when Josh was on, you know, it boggles my mind that you're going to run out and wave your signs about less government, and then as soon as something is coming along that you don't like, you want government to come in and stop it. It's the most hypocritical thing I've ever heard of.
Well, you know, what would be great is hopefully maybe there's somebody out there that'll call in and you know, just explain to us, hey, look, CT, I like you, man, but you're wrong because of this. Or, you know, that ABC guy doesn't know what he's talking about, and here's the reason why. Maybe we'll learn something, but I think we're right.
My experience in employing the knowledge that I have in my day-to-day life has led me to believe I'm correct on this issue.
Right.
You know, when you employ and support Mitt Romney, let's just take Mitt Romney. Here's a guy who says, you know, we will continue to utilize the services of the Federal Reserve. Their job is important. The Federal Reserve is a central bank, and the central bank is a core plank of the Communist Manifesto. How are you supporting a man who supports an institution that finds its roots in communism, in Marxist communism? You know, this is a man who wants to continue the imperialism. Well, in order to fund that, we've been borrowing billions of dollars a day from China. How do you get to look me in the face and tell me how great, you know, your ideology is and how it's so supportive of capitalism when we're borrowing $2 billion a day from China just to fund our occupation overseas? You're out of your mind. You're not conservative, and you better go look in the mirror and start considering what real conservatism is. I'm a libertarian. And there's no secret about that. I approach things from that perspective, where I don't think government should have a single thing to do with social issues. Right. Crime is crime. If you kill somebody, you violated their rights to the pursuit of happiness and being able to live their life. Okay, if you violate somebody's person, that's a crime. But when you tell me that the war on drugs is important for our society, I'd like to point out history and evidence to you that suggests otherwise. When you tell me it's a moral imperative that we federally ban gay marriage, I've got evidence and research and history to point to you that suggests otherwise. Even a federal ban on abortion, that's ridiculous. There is a place for, if mom is going to die, and she does not want to die, and they know she's going to die, then before this fetus becomes a viable infant, and she needs to get this procedure, if she's been raped, get the procedure. Don't you can't have one size fits all on this issue. It's just not possible. I think we might have one of these callers who's going to come in and tell us, where we're wrong. Or maybe not. But we've got a 386 area code, and I'm going to bring them on right now. 386, you're live on Face the Facts. What's on your mind?
Tropical Storm Beryl has arrived with unexpected expectations as it begins the in North Florida and southern coastal Georgia. It is expected to weaken as it turns northeast once inland, as the outer bands gradually graze through Lake and Bibb County, near the site of the famous Confederate Andersonville Prison, which housed arguably nearly 50,000 Union prison soldiers during the United States Civil War. While Tropical Storm Beryl is expected to follow the southeast, other weather conditions are developing in the continental U.S. A massive front is moving through Great Falls, Minnesota.
Interesting stuff.
Changes to the region.
We got a history lesson and a weather report. Goodbye. Enjoy the weekend. We got too much to talk. You know what? I got a weather report for you. On the northeast coast, all the way to the west coast, we have a storm cloud of tyranny forming.
There you go.
And your umbrella isn't going to stop it. I can deal with a little rain. I'm not going to deal with the steel hand of fascism coming down the pike. And that's really where we're at now. People call it all these different names: socialism, fascism, oppression's oppression, and that's what we've got. This ridiculous notion that we're so free. That is how they are keeping us locked up into this system. It's a prison, and we've been convinced we're free while we're behind bars.
Well, and that's absolutely right. One of the things that I've kind of tried to point out is that these labels keep us kind of, it's the little prison that they give us. Everybody's put into this little box. So you're a white Christian, black liberal, whatever. So you're stuck there. And we pretty much readily accept those boxes. It's like my side's better than your side, my box is better than your box, and all this kind of stuff. And what it does is it keeps us from seeing the big picture. I'm kind of reminded of in The Matrix, when they show Neo, and I imagine most people have seen this, but when they show Neo in that pod, this is before he was taken out of that pod, before he was released out of that pod that had the liquid and all that kind of stuff.
Where he was the battery.
Yeah, where he's the battery. And they show it, and, he's in a pod, he's in his own little pod, but then the camera, pulls back, and there's like rows and rows. There's a city of these pods. There's millions of pods. So, you're in your pod, it's your own little world, and that's you and your identity and all that. But millions of these things. So, there's a bigger purpose to all of this crap. And what we talk about is trying to see beyond that little narrow view that you're given and put into, it's much
that scene is the perfect analogy for discovering individualism. Most people are at a point now in their lives where they identify with a group. You talked about it, whether it's the white Lutheran, the black Muslim, the female, the ninja, whatever you assign yourself as a little group. And heck, I do. I call my the libertarian. But the thing about the libertarianism is we identify with the individualism. So I don't feel as bad about putting myself with that label. I'm not a big label guy, but that one, it fits. It is what I espouse, so it makes sense to go ahead and just lay that on the table. And that is the perfect analogy for breaking out of groupthink. This is the key. I mean, I have people on who I agree with on this issue or I agree with on that issue. You and I are not going to agree on everything. Right. You're not.
Right.
It's not going to happen. But we go beyond that.
Exactly.
And again, this is my biggest problem with the way that conservatism is put out there now as the be all end all, the big government. Guys, stop taking your marching orders from some head on the TV or some voice from the radio. You've got to figure out what it is you want in your life and go get that and make sure that everybody else around you has the ability to do that. It's called the pursuit of happiness.
Right. And I think you mentioned this earlier about conservatism, going to the root of the word conserve. And what I take away from that is, it's about freedom. You want less governance. You don't want to be told what to do, what you can do, what you can't do. The idea of smaller government. And, I've referred to myself as independent. I refer to myself as conservative. And I'm pretty conservative in a lot of things. But, I always talk about it as Chris Rock said in his video. He said, look, basically he said the same thing. This partisanship is stupid. He said everybody's conservative on some things and liberal on some things.
Right.
And he gave the example. He said, crime, I'm conservative. Nobody wants to deal with crime. Get the criminals, lock them up. But he said, prostitution, I'm liberal. And it's kind of a joke. But the thing is, honestly, if it's hurting somebody, offending, well, not just offending, but if you're hurting somebody else, then it's a problem. It needs to be dealt with. But, if you ain't hurting anybody else, what's the government got to do with it? And I guess that goes to the point of that homosexuality stuff. We should always start at the place of freedom and then, apply things to that standard. Now, I've said with the homosexuality thing, I think there's a homosexual agenda that's being promoted. And what I think it's about is creating chaos,
and division.
Yeah, that, and also it's just breaking us from nature and what's natural. It's this idea of philosophy where you start to confuse people to where 1 + 1 is 2. Well, the philosopher would maybe say, well, yeah, depending on the circumstances, what if this happened and what if that happened? Look, there's always a situation, but we need some kind of standard. And the standard is 1 + 1 is 2. So it's that kind of thing, but we get into this confusion. On the other hand, as I say, we should always start from the basis of freedom. And I think Josh pointed to this. We're born free. That's inalienable. It's in our Constitution, our inalienable rights. We are born as free human beings. Anything that comes after that is, it's man-made.
And here's the ticket to that term, They say unalienable. I believe the word is properly pronounced unalienable, which means that no government, no entity can seize control of that right. You know, that's what I put a lien on your house. That means I'm trying to seize control of your house.
Right.
I really firmly believe that's the proper pronunciation of that word. Just like we're not a democracy, we're not supposed to be anything close to a democracy. We're supposed to be a representative republic.
Right.
You know, they kind of change terms and definitions and pronunciations to try and, you know, they fool people. And of course, we don't teach civics, so nobody understands that anyway. But you know, when you when you look at that, this is the thing. Regardless of the laws that a government passes, you know, whether you're a Muslim, a Christian, a Jew, I don't care what your religious ideology is, these rights are given to you by the Creator. We'll call him the big electron, okay?
Yeah.
The big electron gave us our rights. They cannot be taken away by another individual or group of individuals. So regardless of what laws they pass, you have the inert ability to exercise those rights whenever you want to, and you should.
Right. As a matter of fact, it's one of those things that if you don't exercise, well, my opinion is that if you don't exercise it, you'll have these nut jobs taken away, because they're all about control. So, you know, if the more that they can take away your rights, then the more control. You know, you can more easily be steered in one direction or another. It's simple control.
And that's really what it comes down to for these people. You know, we've talked about it. You know, Josh called them the enemies. You call them the cabal. I call them parasites. We all have different little names we like to use for them. And at the end of the day, it's not about money. If you see somebody who just out grabbing all the money they can grab, they're low man on the totem pole. The people who are making these decisions are in it for power. They fight amongst one another for the power, but it's like a mafia card game. Occasionally somebody gets killed, you know, occasionally somebody gets thrown out of the card game, but that's their card game, and they're all fighting to win it.
Right.
And the only time that they band together as a collective is when anybody, like myself, Josh Tolley, ABC, you know, LJC 3000, Alex Jones, anytime any of us, you know, interrupt their card game, that's when they put on the collective front.
Yeah. And I totally agree with that. It's just a trip, you know. One thing that I took a little solace in, I guess is the word, is when Josh was talking about, you know, we all seem to be of the opinion that one of the most important things that we can do is continue to kind of communicate this information. And periodically, you know, you're doing these shows, and all of us have a desire to try to help wake people up as to what's really happening out here. But periodically, as you do these shows, you know, you kind of go through that phase where you're like, well, and with me dealing with some of these neocons, where you're kind of like, man, this is like banging your head against a wall, you know, and you wonder if we're doing any damage out there. But it's good to be, what's that? To kind of be reinforced, you know, get that kind of support, talking with each other, speaking with you, speaking with Josh, you know, speaking with the guys, Jay and those guys. It's like going to church and getting rejuvenated.
Right. And you know, when you look at it that way, you know, and I've run into this, and you're aware of it, where, you know, there's times where you feel like you're bashing your head against the wall, I've often felt like I've been talking to a wall when I talk to a neocon or a classic liberal or a neoliberal, whatever little term you want to look. And and there are a lot of times where I think, hell, the wall is more useful. At least it's holding the roof up.
Right.
But
exactly.
And then there are times where when you're doing shows like this, you feel like it's a lot of choir preaching. You're talking to people who already understand, what you get into. What it comes down to for me with this is this information is out here. It's on the net. It's not going anywhere as long as they don't close this open source information down. And regardless of if I have to quit this tomorrow, there is going to be a record of this work. This information is still going to be accessible. I'm not in it for stardom. If I was, I could have went and pimped my shows out a long time ago to the AM stations. I could have went and tried to get I could go to school and go get my communications degree and political science. I could go do all those things. It's not about that for me. If we don't educate these people, then they're going to be accepting this tyranny with wide open arms, and it's going to leave folks like you and me out in the cold to face, the enacting of the NDAA provisions.
Yeah. Well, I've always said that one of the main reasons, I guess the main reason that I do it is to, make my little contribution to try to, I am attempting to participate in shaping the narrative. And what I mean is, the media tells us what the story of the day is. They tell us what's important. That's how we got sold this bill of goods on going to war in Iraq and, for that matter, going to war in Afghanistan. They define for us what the issue is and what's going on. And they tell us, hey, there was a terrorist got on the plane and tried to blow up his crotch, and so therefore everybody needs to start taking off their belt and shoes. There's a shoe bomber that did. These people define our reality through this narrative, and my small attempt, and I think what all of us are doing, what we're attempting to do, is to counter that narrative, because that narrative is a fraud. It's a lie. And that's what got us to where we are. The shoe bomber. Okay, for now on, everybody got to take off their shoes. The crotch bomber. Okay,
now we got to fill your crotch up.
Yeah. What was it? Somebody had done something. Supposedly there was a lady that had something in her baby bottle or something. Somebody did something with the liquid, and then all of a sudden there was no more liquids. This kind of childlike knee-jerk reaction.
What if one of these maniacs picks up his dinner knife with his in-flight meal and tries to take a shake out of? No in-flight meal now? Everybody has to eat with a spork.
Yeah.
What if, George Carlin said it best. What if you had very large hands? You could strangle, a flight attendant or two before somebody could stop you. You cannot legislate safety.
Yeah.
There are certain things you can do to protect, in the market. Fine.
Right.
Fine. I won't argue with that. There are certain things you can do, but you can't do it in the car could hit somebody. That's scary.
Right.
I'm scared now. We have to ban cars, or we have to make them out of styrofoam.
Or Nerf material.
You see what I'm saying? You just got people got to stop taking this ridiculous notion that government is there to protect them and it loves them. It does not love you. It wants to own you. It sees you as a milk cow. And here's the problem with the milk cow, is once you stop producing the milk, you go to the slaughterhouse.
Right.
Take a good look around, America. We're running out of milk.
Yeah. What always struck me about it is, again, so much of this to me seems to be common sense, but what we cherish the most in this country, and the reason that we have pride in being American, and you have this kind of patriotism. What true patriotism is loving and enjoying our freedom, our freedoms, and that kind of thing. But part of being in a free society means that there's no net. And it's inherent in a free society. There's going to be some, dangers for a lack of a better term. But you have crime that happens. Hey, it's a free society, so you can walk down any street. You can walk down the street in the middle of the night. There's some inherent dangers there. There's nut jobs that are out there who can walk down the street in the middle of the night too. But you got to use some common sense and this kind of thing. With commerce, you sign a contract and there's swindlers out there, so you have to buyer beware and all this kind of stuff. And it's nothing that's good about those guys. But again, in a free society, you have people that'll push it to push the envelope as far as legality and stuff like that. So you have to watch out for that. These are problems that are inherent in a free society. But when we start asking for the government to fix this for us, fix that for us, now we've become more dependent. And this thing about safety is just incredible, particularly when you look at everything that was involved with that 911.
When Rolling Stone magazine writes an article about the FBI creating every terrorist bust they've made since 9/11, there's a problem. That is a huge problem. That isn't terrorism. That's a PR stunt. That's no different than if Marvel Studios painted some dude up in green paint, had him throw on some purple pants, and have him run down the highway. It's a PR stunt. It's designed to make you want to look harder at going to watch that movie or give away a little bit more of your control. Right.
And as simple as it sounds, it really is. I always say this. This is a script. The president, the government, these politicians, they're reading off a script. And I think, there's been a number of stories where, you got the DNC and the RNC, and people that don't play by the rules, you may be a Republican and all that, and you may be a Tea Party guy, but if you don't go along with the establishment's idea of, this is what we need to do, then you can be dealt with.
Take one good look at how the establishment Republican Party has treated Ron Paul, his campaign, and the supporters.
Right.
And if that doesn't expose it, I don't know what does.
It just goes to show you, and this guy's been around for 26 years, and everything that the Republicans have said they stand for,
he does.
He does it, and he's about it. And then they turn around, and some of the stuff that they were trying to attack him on is, nobody's passed his bills. Well, everybody else is on the take, So
you remember that scene from I don't know if you watch this. See, I watch everybody's stuff because if you really want the dirt on what the Republicans are up to, you go listen to what the left has to say and then do the research. And if you really want the dirt on what the left is up to, you listen to what the right has to say, and then you go do the research. And I remember, Michael Moore's movie Sicko. He showed all of these politicians, and on the one bill alone was able to price tag who received what from what, what lobbyist.
Yeah.
They're all on. I could think of a handful of people who are probably not on take. Justin Amash, Ron Paul, probably Rand. There's just too few of them, and it's something that Gerald LeBaron from honorandoffice.org has talked about. It's something that Josh Tolley has talked about. At some point, we've got to stop electing these people based on the talking points and whether they've got an R&D next to their name, and start looking at whether or not they've got principles, character, and a backbone.
Right. I would say that we really there has been a lot of improvement, and I think an increased number of people have kind of awakened. Particularly, a good example is this whole left-right thing. You do hear a lot of people saying that there's no difference between the left and right, and I have to say, even amongst those people that I talk with over there on the conservative show, I've noticed a number of people pointed out. I actually went to this other show today, just kind of hopping around, and this other guy that's part of that kind of conservative group was doing a show, and he was talking about the FEMA camps. And this is conservative shows, and they were calling me a nut job and it wasn't only me, there's a couple of us that pointed out something about FEMA camps, and here we go with the conspiracy theory. Alex Jones, here we, it's always to humiliate or marginalize you and all this kind of stuff.
They could never attack the message, they have to attack the messenger.
Right. But what surprised me about it today when I heard it, this guy Tesler, he's amongst this kind of, there's a little kind of grouping or block of conservative shows, and they all know this guy, and I guess he fits right in with them. And I hadn't heard him speak like this before, but on today's show he was talking about FEMA camps, and he played Rachel Maddow criticizing, talking about Obama and all this stuff, and mentioning that, and I was really surprised. And what I think it is that, I've said this before, as this agenda progresses, at some point it becomes so freaking obvious. That's the danger that these devils deal with. As they progress the agenda,
they got to come out in the open.
Yeah, exactly. They have to come out in the light. So it's an opportunity for us to jump on it.
You're absolutely right. Hey, we're about down on the end here. I wanted you to go ahead and plug your shows again. You do a lot of great work, and I want people to be able to go find your stuff.
Hey, well, first off, thanks a lot, buddy, for having me on. We'll get together, and like I said, tomorrow's show over on Conservative Primetime, we're going to be talking about Islam. I'll touch base with you to see when we can kind of actually do like a part 2 to this. But you can come over tomorrow and we can talk on there too.
Right.
I'm doing 3 shows right now. On Freedomizer, I do 2 shows. Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Central for 1 hour. Oh, I'm sorry, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern for 1 hour. And on Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central for 3 hours. It's a 3-hour show on Fridays, every Friday on Freedomizer Radio. And then on Mondays, I just started doing a co-hosting. It's not my show. It's Conservative Primetime is the name of the show, with the host Jermaine. He's a real cool guy, and he's the host. I'm co-hosting over there on Mondays. It's at 10:30 p.m. Central Time, which is kind of late, 11:30 p.m. Eastern, and that's like a 2-hour show. And that show's it's a hoot. A bunch of neocons and conservatives over there. So it gets to be pretty interesting. But you guys can see me over there, and hopefully people stop by.
Fantastic. Hey, man, I want to thank you for your time. I know how tight it could be, and we'll definitely get in touch, and we'll do our part 2 on this, fake conservatism and the cult of personality. I also want to thank Josh Tolley. I know he's off in the ether somewhere doing his thing, but I appreciate him coming in and giving us a good 2 solid hours. And man, this is what this is all about, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, right on, man. Hey, thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you soon there, CD.
Alrighty. There he goes, folks. That's ABC again. You guys can find him here on Blog Talk Radio. I'm pretty sure if you just type in ABC, you might be able to find his stuff. And if you're having trouble finding it, let me know. I will get you the links, and you'll be able to go find it that way. In the meantime, folks, this has been yet another action-packed, fun-filled adventure known as Face the Facts. I'm Kerry Corn, your friendly neighborhood conspiracy theorist. I will be back with you either Thursday or Sunday, sort of depends on how that cookie crumbles. And in the meantime, I'm going to kick out of here with a little DJ Dead Tony. I hope to see you guys next week. Please take this information and share it with your friends, share it with your family. Do not be a cul-de-sac for information.
Full service, residential, and
You missed it all, you're tripping, y'all.